Happy Sunday, everyone. How's everyone doing now? I like the chatter already in the chat. Hey, Voidros, one of those. Thank you for the follow. Welcome to the channel. No problem, 88 Opus. So you guys should be getting, anyone who has the Google Classroom should be getting the links to the slides. Actually, they should be getting all assignments. They should be dropping at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So about an hour before each of the classes goes live, it should drop all of the content in the Google Classroom, all the assignments, etc. So hopefully you guys were able to get those. If you weren't any part of the Google Classroom, head over and you can follow along that way. I do have I'll have a lot of typos tonight. So I was already a bad typist. I already had a lot of typos. But I finally built my new keyboard. I finally got around to getting it all built. It's working out pretty well, but it is a new layout. So what's interesting is you'll notice it doesn't have any arrow keys. It's a 60% keyboard, but it's actually, it's got this modifier key here and a short backspace. Backspace is usually, or delete key is usually on top of here, and there's usually a pipe here. But yeah, so that's been interesting. I actually thought it was going to be a different layout when it came. I couldn't figure out why my plate didn't work for it, but I actually like it a lot. I'm getting used to it. So I'll make a lot of typos tonight, but it'll be fine. We'll get through it. That's what the backspace button is for. We'll figure that out. Sub on Twitch, how do I get access to the Google Classroom? Let me go ahead and get that to you now. Actually, no. I'm gonna stop doing that. I'm gonna stop sending people stuff individually. Rain Airmo, I'm gonna hit you with the Discord link. Let's see, Discord. There's a Discord link. You need to install or download Discord. You don't need to install it, but you can log in. It's pinned to the general channel. So whenever you join the Discord, the general channel that it puts you in, it'll go ahead and it will give you the information on how to get logged into the Google Classroom. In the Discord, if you're not subscribed, it may let you in the Discord, but I think it'll boot you from the Discord after a day or so. It actually may not even let you in. But follow the link if you are subscribed to the Discord, and you can go ahead and you can get set up with the Google Classroom. You don't need the Google Classroom for the stream right now, so if you don't rush to get in there now. If you can just follow along for most of the stuff. But cool, tonight's gonna be fun. We're finally getting into Linux. This is like my second favorite thing to teach because there's just a lot of stuff you can do with Linux. Like you can definitely go off on your own and try all kinds of things. In Linux, you can, I don't know, this is like the base level of knowledge you kind of need for whatever you're doing. So if you're doing systems administration, or you're doing even development, software development, web development, whatever, knowing some Linux is always great. And I think definitely in the first two sessions, that stuff's gonna be super valuable. The third one may be a little more towards the system side of things, definitely more focused on DevOps. But for everyone else who's not super focused on DevOps, definitely today and on Wednesday should be a huge help for you. So actually my uncle actually texted me about the misspelling on the starting soon page. And I didn't mess with it for a little while. I didn't mess with it immediately because no one seemed to notice. I figured not a lot of people were, taking a look at it and staring at it while they were waiting. That's why people missed it. I missed it as well. So I'll definitely get that fixed up. Cool. Hey F Momo, welcome to the stream. Let's get the slides pulled up. Let's go over what we're gonna talk about today. Because there's a lot today, actually. I think from now on, all the DevOps things are going to be jam-packed. It's been interesting going from the DevOps stuff over to the Python stuff, just because we're only focusing on Python. We're going a little bit slower. Like, we get to spend a lot more time on things, and it's not quite as jam-packed, but this stuff has a lot. So we already finished up Introduction to Programming. So now we're on Introduction to Linux. So tonight we'll be talking about virtualization. So we'll get Linux installed via VirtualBox. You don't need to use VirtualBox. We're going to talk about virtualization as a whole, how you would be using it, in an actual like work environment, and we're gonna install VirtualBox and get Linux installed in VirtualBox. You don't necessarily need to do this. This is for anyone who has never done this before and wants to mess with Linux in this fashion. There's some easier ways to have Linux available for you to play with. If you're not running a Mac, or actually, for any operating system, there's easier ways to get Linux kind of installed enough for you to play with. But we'll be getting it installed just because virtualization is a big part of a lot of jobs still. So we'll get it installed, and then we'll hop right into the command line, and we're going to start learning how to navigate. We're going to talk about the Linux file structure, and we're going to learn about that and users and groups. So how do you add users to systems and groups and things like that? We'll talk about file permissions and text manipulation. How do we modify text? So we'll definitely be getting hands-on. We'll be getting into the terminal and learning a bunch tonight. So I think there are a couple of commands for tonight. I didn't move them over to the panel, but I know you can do like VirtualBox, and I think that will give you a link to VirtualBox. I'm gonna show you guys how to install VirtualBox in a second. We're gonna be using VirtualBox, but we're gonna go over some slides first. I think there's I don't remember how to get the list of commands. Let me see. Okay, there goes the link to the commands, but I think there are some other commands in there on one of these pages that gives you some more information about where you can go to get the files and things that we're going to be using tonight. Later, again, you don't need to do it right now. Not a huge deal. But let's go ahead and let's get started, just because I think tonight I want to spend more time. I want to have enough time to really work through the Linux stuff, like actually hands-on talking about that stuff rather than installing it, because although it's important, you don't need to be able to do this. So let's hop into the slides for tonight. Nope, that's not where I wanted to go. I wanted to go to Drive. I wanted to go to Bootcamp Curriculum. And let's hop into Introduction to Linux. So this actually falls inside of I think I pulled it off of here. Oh no, I didn't. So this falls into our first course in the operating systems concepts and server management piece. So you will, even though we're in the world of serverless, there's always servers. This gets into the piece of the DevOps course where now we're managing systems and we're learning how to manage systems, which is going to be the core of your job. Managing software, managing things on systems, deploying things to systems, making sure systems are available. All those things. So this is our first foray into that. What do we have? Linux. We'll learn about some networking and security, web servers and traffic management. Cool, in a lab. All right, awesome. So let's hop in. Present. All right, Tux for president. Tux is the name of the Linux mascot. The Linux mascot is actually a penguin, and he's pretty dope. I'll show you. That's Tux right here. I was gonna say I'll show you in a bit, but there goes Tux. Not really sure why it's a penguin. Maybe that's something we can look up in a little bit, but let's first talk about what Linux is. So Linux is a FOSS operating system. So you might see FOSS around in capital letters, but this is an acronym, stands for Free and Open Source Operating System, or Free and Open Source is what FOSS means. It stands for Free and Open Source Software. That's the second S. So Free and Open Source Software, the second S in FOSS. But Linux is a free and open source software. That means that the community contributes to it, as well as there are corporations and things that contribute to it, but it is free to use, to modify, and it's made available to you. It's also a Unix-like operating system. So you have to say, for legal reasons, you have to say Unix-like operating systems. And so Mac is also a Unix-like operating system. And it's very similar to, it's pretty similar to Unix. It has a lot of the same underlying things that make it, but there are some things that are put into it that make it different. I'm actually not a huge Unix fan. Again, if you're at first glance, they're pretty similar, but they are not the same. It was created by a guy by the name of Linus Torvalds. He actually I believe he still contributes to the Linux kernel. He wrote the original Linux kernel. Has been working with it for a long time. If he no longer contributes to it, it just recently happened. He's been doing it up until like now. I think I saw a post maybe saying that he probably wouldn't write any more code, but he would just kind of be watching the project. But yeah, he still contributes to it, or did up until recently. And what is Linux? It's really just a kernel now. All the kernel is the underlying, I guess, engine of the operating system. So there's bigger ways to describe this, but for it to make sense in the context of what we have now, the kernel is just an engine that kind of lives underneath everything that has connections between the hardware and the software, and that you can develop applications on top of. And so that's really all that Linux is. So let's go to the next slide. So Linux has this paradigm called distributions. And distributions are basically a collection of applications packaged up along with the Linux kernel to give you a different Linux experience. And again, they all have their own ethoses. They have their own ideas of what you need. Some of them serve different purposes. There are things like like Kali Linux, that's purely for penetration testing and security. There's things like Ubuntu, that's for the user experience, the desktop user experience, to kind of make Linux as easy as possible. There are things like CentOS and Fedora, which are for enterprise users, and they're designed to be as stable as they can be. But there's a bunch of different ones. The only thing that makes them different really is the collection of applications that were packaged up with the kernel, and kind of how they manage themselves are kind of the differences, but there are tons. There are a whole lot of Linux distributions. The distribution, again, that I'm using is Pop! OS by a company called System 76. And we'll talk deeper about that, but there are a bunch. It is an Ubuntu. It's based off of Ubuntu. So we're about to go over that lineage right here. I know you can't see this. It's not a big deal that you can't see this. The idea of this is simply that all these kind of branch off of, this is Linux back here. This is Linux, and there's all these distributions. All these are distributions that kind of branch off of the Linux kernel as well as each other. So can't really see it, but there are these branches and forks of Linux. So again, there's the kind of the main kind of bloodlines of Linux. I would say there are four main branches. One is Debian-based Linux. So Debian's a pretty stable release. But things that were built off of it are things like Ubuntu, things like Pop! OS. There are a bunch of distributions that are built off of that. But the Debian-based distributions are kind of sitting at one part of Linux. Then there's the Red Hat-based distribution. So Red Hat-based. So there's a company called Red Hat Enterprise company that manages and pushes forward this version of Linux. Again, it's designed for more enterprise users, but those are Fedora. CentOS is the kind of open source version of that. I mean, they're all open source, but Red Hat actually charges a license fee for support. CentOS is the kind of free version of that, where you do not need a license. And then there's Fedora, which is more user focused version of Red Hat Linux, basically. That's a little more cutting edge. It doesn't keep older software in the same, it moves a lot faster than CentOS and Red Hat does. Then I would say there's probably like your Arch distributions. So Arch Linux is a distribution, it's both famous and infamous at the same time. It's a distribution where it's definitely for advanced users, for users who know what they're doing. You have to do just about all of your setup manually. There's things like Gentoo Linux, which you really do have to do all of your setup manually, but Arch just kind of, you install the things that you need, things from the desktop environment to, your terminal, whatever you need, you install. It doesn't really come with a bunch of other stuff. So you kind of have to make it what you want it to be. And the last big one is probably SUSE. I think that's how you pronounce it. SUSE or OpenSUSE or SUSE. I call it OpenSUSE, but I think it's SUSE. And I actually don't see many people using this, but I know it's a big distro line that a lot of people use. It's also an enterprise product. And from what I've seen, I think it's used heavily in the UK. Now, I don't see it used so much here. I never see any jobs or anything with it. I've never had to use it at a job. But yeah, OpenSUSE and SUSE and OpenSUSE, we'll check out those, are another one for that. Those are kind of the main bloodlines, but there are a bunch, and there are a bunch of distributions that kind of branch off of each of those major bloodlines. So yeah, so part of your homework after this is actually going to be to go and explore and find out, you know, what things you like about some and don't like about others, and download a few and try them out. But yeah, we'll talk about that again. Redeem, send a message in sub only mode. Is the chat supposed to be sub only? No, so the chat is not sub only right now at this time, but there are times where it does go into sub only mode, but it is not sub only mode right now. All right, so virtualization. I generally, sorry about that. I actually, Paul Blart, I generally only send the chat into sub only mode when there's over a certain amount of people. We usually get there a little bit later in the stream. A lot of questions are being asked, and then I send it into sub only mode. All right, so let's talk about virtualization. So, computing has come a long way. Oh, it is in sub only mode right now? It is in, what about now? All right, I didn't know that. I don't know how I got that way by default. I didn't hit the button, but I think followers should be able to, yeah, followers only mode. I just hit the button on my stream deck. I think we're good to go. Hopefully followers can send some messages there. Yeah, so virtualization. Computing has come a long way in the past few years, but in the past 20 years, computing has come a long way. So virtualization is a paradigm which allows you to virtualize additional, for right now, we're gonna say additional computers, additional computers on a single computer. So it's kind of it's a paradigm of taking a single computer, a single physical computer, and creating software-based instances of other computers on that one big one. So splitting up its resources into multiple computers. So I can have one big Windows server, and I can split it up into, you know, 2 smaller Windows servers and 3 Linux servers or something like that. However you choose, it could be more than that as well. But that's what virtualization is. Again, it's not real. It's not, I mean, it's real, but it's not a physical server or a physical computer. So it's a virtualized instance of a computer. And so what is it? It's operating system inception. So it's an operating system inside of another operating system. And it runs on something called a hypervisor. It runs via something called a hypervisor. And there are 2 types of hypervisor. And I don't know why this GIF is making me laugh so much right now, but there are 2 types of hypervisors. Type 1 is bare metal, and we're gonna talk about what bare metal is. And type 2 is hosted. Type 2 is what we're gonna be installing using to install today. This is probably the one that, if you've messed with one on your own personal time, you've probably been using a type 2 hypervisor for this. The virtual computer that you create on these things is called a virtual machine. And the last thing I just want to stick on here is, because we're going to get to containers way later, and I always get lots of questions about containers. But containers are they're not the same as virtualization. They are a type of virtualization, or they can be argued as a type of virtualization. It's got a lot of other stuff with C groups and with the way you section off your computers. But I do like to throw containers in here as like a middle ground. There is some there's some stuff there. There's some overlap here. It's not virtualization, but there's some virtualization aspects to containers. But we're not going to talk about containers tonight. Cool. Hypervisor types. So we just talked about the 2 types of hypervisors. Try / subscribers off. Let's try that out. I now know what / is. Let's see if I can find it on my keyboard. Thank you. Subscribers off. It says I put it into. Oh, okay. It's interesting because it gave me some output when I hit the button on my stream deck, and yep, I see everyone's. All right, sorry about that. I am very sorry about that. I didn't hit the sub only button. I don't really know what happened, but I'm sorry about that. I really don't know how that happened. But cool. Welcome into the chat, everyone. Hopefully, if anyone had any questions, that you were trying to ask during that time, and I didn't get to answer it, definitely send it and I will go back. I'll stop and I'll answer those questions because that was definitely my bad. But now I do know, I am glad. Thank you, Auto Exec. I now know about, I never think to check for all these commands that I have available to me. So thank you for that with the / subscriber off. And again, I got the subscriber off thing. I got the / first try because I knew what it was. All right. Type 1, bare metal. So this is when you install the hypervisor. When you install the hypervisor application, this is where you install it right directly on the server. So this is, when I say the server, imagine you have your computer, whatever you're looking at this on, your computer, your MacBook, whatever. Imagine there was no operating system installed on it. Imagine that there wasn't Windows, there wasn't Mac OS on there. You got the hardware. And yeah, you could turn it on. You can get to the BIOS if you know what the BIOS is, but you can turn it on. You can get to some backend system stuff, but that's all you have. A hypervisor, a type 1 hypervisor, a bare metal hypervisor, is when you install this hypervisor, which in the case where there's no operating system, is kind of essentially the operating system, but you install this software onto the bare metal, onto the hardware. And then once you've got that hypervisor, so imagine we talked about VirtualBox. If you're familiar with VirtualBox, imagine if instead of installing VirtualBox in Windows, we install VirtualBox right on our machine. So with nothing else on there, we installed it right on the MacBook or whatever, and then we would go from there. We would install a bunch of operating systems inside of VirtualBox or inside of whatever that hypervisor is. So this is what cloud computing uses. This is what servers that you rent, server space that you rent from web hosting companies, etc. This is what companies use internally. Usually it's type 1. It's type 1 hypervisor. They'll take this hardware, they'll install something like ESXi, VMware on top of straight onto the hardware. And then they'll install guest OSs inside of it, as many as they can fit or as many as they need. Why would you want to do something like this? Because we'll see type 2 in a second, but because there's no operating system, it gives you back some of that overhead. It uses less resources so that you can go ahead and install more operating systems on top of it. So yes, it is. Longbelly said it perfectly. How does it run without the OS though? It's the OS. It is that this hypervisor is an operating system that allows for other operating systems to be created and run inside of it. So yes, imagine this as the OS, but not an OS that you're used to or that you're familiar with. It's not Windows. It's not Mac OS. It is an operating system that manages virtual machines. So type 2. Type 2 is the one that you would install on your computer. Sure, there are servers out here who use things like this, but this is things like actual VirtualBox. So your hardware. So again, think about your MacBook, your computer, whatever, your PC, and then you have your host OS. So again, OS means operating system. Your host OS is something like Windows. Windows 10 would be your host OS. Mac OS would be your host operating system. And then on the operating system, we install an application. So an application like VirtualBox or like VMware Player or something like that right here. And then we install our guest operating systems in there. So from here, I wish I could circle it from here. It's the same thing. It's definitely the same thing. But there's this extra operating system on type 2 that kind of runs the underlying everything. And this actually uses up a lot of resources. So again, you get a little more bang for your buck out of this one. Than you do for type 2. But again, type 2 is generally what you're going to use on a personal computer. Most enterprises, cloud computing, things like that are using type 1. They're installing a hypervisor right onto bare metal servers. Not crazy important that you remember the difference between those two, but I have seen interview questions that ask the difference. And I think it is a good thing to know that as we get into this, that when you hear that Amazon is virtualizing servers, that they're not installing VirtualBox onto Windows and running a bunch of servers from there, that they are doing something more similar to this, but they're doing some wild stuff right now. So it's a little bit different as well. All right. So let's go ahead and let's get Linux installed. Let's knock this part out of the way because this will take a little bit of time because I want to dive into all of us actually learning Linux because you don't actually need to install it this way to be able to use it. But I want you to see, if you've never seen any type of virtualization, I want you to be able to use it. So again, you can type in command VirtualBox. I'll do it again, VirtualBox. And that'll give you the link to download VirtualBox. You can try to go ahead and install it right now. You should just be able to run through the installer. It works on Mac, Windows, and OS X. There is another option called VMware Player. The only reason I'm not using VMware Player is because I told you guys a while ago that or VMware Workstation Player. It is free. But the only reason I'm not using it is because I'm a proponent of free and open source software. And although this is free, it's not free and open source, but VirtualBox is. So if you click on the link to the VirtualBox downloads, you can grab Oracle's VirtualBox. It does take a little bit to install, like through the installer. It's easy to install, but it does sometimes take a few minutes to install. But you can go ahead and get that installed. VMware Player doesn't offer free snapshots. I actually didn't know that. So that's another reason why we should be using VirtualBox, because VMware Player does not give you free snapshots, and snapshots are a great thing. Snapshots are a way to take backups or point-in-time backups of your servers. So that's another reason to use VirtualBox. But hey, Bearsy, how you doing tonight? Let's see here. All right. So I already have it installed, but what you would do is you would download VirtualBox. And again, it works on any kind of host. So if you have a Windows computer, you would go ahead and click here. If you have OS X, you would click here, and Linux distributions, you can go ahead and you can click here, or Solaris, but like none of you are going to be using Solaris. That's a old server thing that you shouldn't be messing with. But yeah, so you would download whatever executable you need, and go ahead and just run through the click through and get that installed. So I already have VirtualBox installed here. So this is what it'll look like when it opens up. You will not see these two things here. These are mine. These are two things that I have. And can I make it bigger? I can't really make it any bigger in here. But this is what it'll look like, but without these two things. And I'll show you in a second how to get everything installed. I already have ISOs downloaded. I'll explain to you what ISOs are as well. Yeah. So we're about to get that installed. I like both VMware and VirtualBox. I might give VMware a chance. I've actually haven't given it a chance in a really long time, just because VirtualBox has kind of always fit my needs. But I actually don't really virtualize anything anymore with the cloud, so it's pretty interesting. Are there any risks in dual booting if you have plenty of storage space? Will system conflict or something? So this is an excellent question. Evil one a candy too. So absolutely. So I do 100% encourage dual booting if you can. So for anyone who doesn't know, dual booting is it's installing both Windows and Linux on your computer, full operating systems on your computer if you have space, with a bootloader. So when your computer starts up, before it boots into either operating system, it says, "Hey, I see two operating systems here, or more. If you like, you can do more than just dual." It says, "Hey, which one do you want to use? Do you want to use Windows or Linux?" And you can boot into whichever one you choose. And if you need to use the other, you can switch. You can reboot your computer and select which one you want. Yes, dual booting is great if you know what you're doing. There's no risk if you're confident you know what you're doing. But if you don't know what you're doing, the risks are that you could lose your main operating system. So if you're not confident that you could restore your Windows instance or whatever your main operating system is, that would be problematic. So I would get help before doing it. Yeah, I'll get help before doing it, but besides that, there's no real risk minus, both sides will have less space, but yeah, you could blow away your, if you don't know what you're doing, you could blow away your operating system. It is pretty easy to do nowadays. There are tons of videos on it that maybe I can find and share, but yeah, if you know what you're doing, go for it for sure. I need your Linux theme. Great. I'm so glad you said that, Kilobyte Gaming. So I think you came and said it last time. All right. I'll post what the actual themes and stuff are below. So if you know what you're doing, you can grab the themes. I'll do that right at the end of here. I'll post it in the panel, but I have the YouTube video I made for this week, and it's already almost 100% complete. I was going to release it today or tomorrow, but I looked up what the best times to release YouTube videos are, and so I'm going to release them on Thursday. So Thursdays are going to be the drop day now. Gives me a lot of time, but it's all about like kind of what I'm using, how to set it up. So if you have no idea what you're doing, I thought it would be a good idea to do it after we learn to install Linux. It'll give you everything you need. It'll tell you exactly what my themes are, my settings files, where to put everything, to get a similar setup to me or same setup. Or if you want to grab something else, I kind of put in there like the other places you go to grab other themes, etc. So that'll be coming soon, but I can post your theme. Actually, let me go ahead and give you what theme I have now. Let me see, tweaks. The parents I'm using for my application, so like this application window right here, I'm using like a Mac OS Catalina dark theme, but for the shell I'm using a Chrome OS dark theme. So like for like this stuff and like the way my bar looks, I'm using a Chrome OS dark, and for my Windows I'm actually using a Mac Catalina thing, and my icons are also Mac icons. That's why the files is like this. But I will, again, you'll see how to do that. You'll definitely see how to do that soon. But those are what they are. So hopefully you can look those up. Yep, no problem. Not a problem at all. It's easy to do Ubuntu and Windows, but you have to install Windows first. Yes, Black Coffee. I always know exactly who's done it before. You absolutely have to install Windows first, or you will have a hell of a time. So it is possible to install Linux first, but it's way harder if you do it that way. Like it's way harder, like substantially harder. So like to the point where if now I make a mistake, I always just reinstall Windows first and then put Linux on no matter what. Even if I've like have my whole Linux set up and everything, because I don't have time for that. You can run your Linux partition in Hyper-V on Windows while dual booting. You can do that. You can definitely do that. Also, you can boot from a live USB as well. Yes, so you can. Most Linux distros have the ability to boot from a live USB. So this is how you would install them on a computer. Most people's computers don't have disk drives anymore. So now what you would do to install them is you download a file called an ISO, which has the operating system on it. It's just one big file, and you usually would burn it to a disk. You used to burn it to a disk. Now you can burn them to USB drives. You can take your USB drive and plug it into someone's computer, and you can you can boot up a live version of Linux from this USB stick, and you can mess around and you can play around. You can install it if you want, or you can just, use it to play around with, which is interesting as well. But it was actually, I should have done that. I couldn't do it the first time we ran through this because I was using a single computer. I would have been able to do that this time because I'm using a dual PC stream setup, so it wouldn't break anything. So that would have been a good idea. I'm glad I forgot about that. All right, so perfect. Thanks for subbing on YouTube. My last YouTube video was really bad. That's why I didn't promote it at all, because I used a new setup, and I basically recorded over an hour worth of recordings. I had to cut it up. It would have been way shorter than that, but almost 60% of the audio was unusable. So that was super weird. But this Linux one is coming out super well. Probably my best work to date, to be 100% honest. But we'll see. If Windows 10 is your main OS, just use VirtualBox. Agreed. How much resources should I give my VM? So, great question. So let's go ahead and do that. So I've already downloaded an ISO. So I'm going to give you guys a link really quick to, I want you to just download Ubuntu. If you don't have it and you want to install this in VirtualBox, I want you to go ahead and use Ubuntu for this. Now I'm going to give you the server download link. I don't necessarily think, so if your computer doesn't have at least 8 gigs of RAM, go ahead and install the server. So click the download link and choose either 18.04 or 1910 server. So the server does not come with a graphical user interface. So I'm running Linux here. Everything you're seeing is the GUI. It's called a GUI. It's a GUI. It's graphical user interface. The server will not come with a graphical user interface. It will come simply it'll drop you basically into a terminal. Your terminal won't look this good, but it'll drop you into a black screen with white letters. But if your computer doesn't have at least 8 gigs of RAM, that's probably for the best, just because this will take up way less resources. But if you do have 8 gigs of RAM, I recommend grabbing the desktop for now, just because I think you'll be able to make some of the connections a little bit better when you're first learning. When you're learning. So go ahead and download. It'll download a file like this. Let's go into documents, ISOs. It'll download some files that look like this. It'll download a single file. So I downloaded both the desktop and it would both desktop and the server here, and you can see them here in the name, server and desktop. So it'll be one of those two things. Would you mind covering the Ubuntu minimum requirements? Yeah. Let's take a look at the Ubuntu minimum requirements. Let's check. Oh, wow. For anyone who's joined a little bit later than the very beginning, I built a new keyboard and it has a new layout that I'm not used to. So I'm going to make a lot of mistakes. So looks like the minimum requirements are a 2 gigahertz dual core processor. If your computer's from the last maybe 7 years, you probably have this. You probably have this. I can almost guarantee if you have 4 gigs of RAM that you have this, that you have 2 gigahertz dual core processor, most likely. 4 gigs of RAM. You again, probably about the same thing. As long as you bought your computer in the last 7 years or so, you probably have this. You can probably check your My Computer or something if you're on Windows to find out. 25 gigs of hard drive space. So that's something good to check. You do need some hard drive space for this. It's interesting. It's interesting that it says 25 gigs. I think the installation is only around 4, but that's fine. It says you need 25 gigs. That's pretty helpful. And as long as you have a monitor capable of at least this resolution, you should be good. And again, any probably monitor purchased in the last 8 years or so should be fine with this. And again, this is either CD-ROM drive or USB port for the media installer. So that's what's important. Most computers don't have a CD-ROM drive anymore, but they'll have USB ports. So one of those things. So if you do not have any of these things, or if you don't have the minimum requirements, or your computer's running slow and you can't get VirtualBox installed, don't sweat it. There are a couple things you can do. You can grab the problem is we're not here yet, so it's hard to recommend something, but there's probably some other options for this, so throw them out if anyone has easy access to a Linux terminal. But I like people to have access to a machine that they could continue to use on their own. May take you a bit to get set up, but I think DigitalOcean is the easiest to grab a droplet on. So I want to say the cheapest droplet is like $5 a month. It's not as good as free, but you can go to DigitalOcean and grab yourself a droplet, which is basically it's a virtual machine that you pay for, that you have access to, that you can kind of do whatever you want with, and it might it might be a better option for you. I would tell you to grab an AWS instance, but there's a lot of caveats with that. There's a lot of caveats with that. One, just how to log in there's some levels of knowledge you have to have just to get logged in. Maybe a Cloud9 instance would help, but we'll stay away from that. This is probably the easiest. And if this is the option that you go with and you're having trouble kind of getting logged in and stuff, even though I think they give you a way to log in pretty easily that you can kind of copy and paste, let me know, and maybe we can figure that out. All right, so I've already downloaded. So after you download your ISO files, all you got to do in here is go ahead and click new. So I'm going to click new here, and then it's going to give me a new operating system window. So you just give it a name. Actually, one thing I want to caveat before all this is you may not be able to install whatever operating system you downloaded, for a number of reasons. One, your computer, there's some settings and things that have to be set up for some computers for you to be able to actually do any type of virtualization. If you're using something like a Ryzen desktop processor, I think by default, virtualization is not enabled on Ryzen process in the BIOS for most Ryzen setups. So sometimes there's going to be other steps that you have to do to be able to get virtualization to work. That is going to be an exercise. Everyone's computer is going to be a little bit different. It's going to work for most of you right out of the box, but if not, that's going to be an exercise in troubleshooting for you. And yeah, you have to go out and search for those answers. I can almost guarantee you it'll be something in your BIOS that you have to change. I forgot what BIOS stands for, but this is kind of the underlying, this is kind of like the operating system that runs your motherboard. It's kind of like the base software and firmware that kind of helps your computer to be able to do anything, that manages all the hardware and stuff. So yeah, you may have to do that. A sort of basic input output system. Okay, so that makes sense. That's perfect. I don't think I actually ever knew that. I don't think I ever knew what BIOS stood for. So that's good to know. But yes, there may be some settings in your BIOS. Sometimes you have to restart your computer and like hold down escape or hold down F1 or F10 or something. But take the name of your computer, Google, Dell XPS 13, how to get into BIOS, and you should be able to find out that information for yourself. So if you dual boot with limited experience, is there a risk of messing things up enough to have an issue straight up reinstalling Windows? No, you should be able to reinstall Windows, unless you try to manually do some partitioning and break your disk or something. But even then, I doubt that'll happen. Yeah, you might mess up your Windows installation, but I think you'll be fine to reinstall it. So, all right, so we got this new thing here. I'm gonna type in stream Linux install. You can call this literally whatever you want. And so machine folder, this is just gonna be where it saves all the files and saves the installation. So I'm gonna leave it to the default, but if you have another disk on your computer, another hard drive or another partition, go ahead and change that to what you want it to be. Then you can choose what kind of operating system it is. So it is Linux, and then the version. So we talked about distributions, and so on this list, there are going to be a bunch of distributions. And again, there's going to be families of distributions. There are way more distributions than this, but these are various distribution families, basically. So yes, I could probably choose Debian. I'm using Ubuntu, which is Debian based. I could probably choose Debian and it will be fine. I could actually probably choose almost any of these and it will be fine. But I'm going to go ahead and choose Ubuntu. Basically, what this does is it sets up some things that try to make your virtual machine most compatible with the software you're going to be installing on it. So it can be okay if you get this wrong, but it also could not be okay. I've messed around with it a few times and I've had interesting results. So I'm going to set up Ubuntu 64-bit version. I think by default, any of those downloads I gave you should download 64-bit. I think you have to click other things to get 32-bit one. If you downloaded something and you only see 32-bit options here, there's also probably something in your BIOS that you have to check out. And if that's the case, it probably won't let you install the thing that you downloaded. So all you got to do, I changed that to OpenSUSE. Let's go back to Ubuntu. Let's go ahead and click next. So remember, I said that Linux or VirtualBox basically it separates the amount of resources that your computer has to each of the virtual machines. You can divvy it up however you'd like. So memory size. So this computer actually has 16 gigs of memory. So it'll actually allow me to take all 16, which is crazy. Gives you a little nice visual bar to tell you when you've kind of gone too far. I would recommend giving this, if you can spare it, I would recommend giving it 2 gigs. I'm going to give mine 3. I'll give mine 4 actually. But I will recommend giving it 2. I think it'll run. I think it'll run with 1. Although the requirements are 4 gigs for Ubuntu, it'll run with less. I've actually had a surprising amount of experience running it with just 1 gig of memory. So it says the recommended memory size is 1024 megabytes. That is 1 gigabyte of memory. But I'm gonna go ahead and give mine I'm gonna give mine 4, just because I have the space for it. But don't give it too much. Don't get into the red. Again, this is going to be sharing the memory that your underlying operating system has. So I don't have a great answer for you for exactly how much you should give it. Make a best guess. If there are problems, you can always lower it after. This is not set in stone. You can change this after you set it up. So I'm gonna give mine 4 gigs here. Now leave this part here. So you have some options that you can do with your disk. So I'm gonna have it create a virtual hard disk. Now, if you already had a virtual hard disk that you want to use, you could do that. You can set something up with something that is existing already, but I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna create one. I'm gonna leave it as VDI. There's also some options for hard disk type. They all provide different benefits. I'm gonna leave mine with a default VirtualBox disk image. Not important to know what the differences between those are right now at all. Dynamically allocated or fixed size. So if it was dynamically allocated, it's dynamic and in the size that it has and the amount of space that it has. But the fixed disk will always be the same. You can extend those as well, but you have to do a little bit more work. You have to do a little more work to extend these or to shrink them. But they're faster to use. And again, so that's your choice. I will leave it as dynamically allocated for now. No big deal. Click next. And then you want to give it the amount of disk space that you have. So this is hard drive space. I think I have a lot of space on here. I have about 263 gigs available. You can probably go into like my computer or about this Mac or something like that to find out how much disk space you have left. But yeah, see how much you have, see how much you can give to it. We're not going to be doing a ton with this. 10 gigs is fine. I'm going to give mine 20 just in case. And you click create. So when you click create, it does not install the operating system. It basically has now carved out a section. It's basically carved out a place on your file system. It's allocated some memory, it's allocated some things to this virtual machine, but the virtual machine is not running. So it's actually not using any of those computer resources. So yeah, it's sitting here by default. I'm gonna do one more thing just because we're on stream and I want it to work a little bit faster, is I'm gonna click settings for my Linux stream install. I'm gonna go to system. So there's all these options in here. I'm gonna click processor and give mine a little bit of extra processing power. So my computer has 4 cores and 8 threads. So in here it sees it as actually 8 cores. I'm gonna give this just 2 cores. So this is gonna give it a virtual processing units or it's gonna give it access to virtual processing units, which is gonna give it it's basically a bigger brain. It's going to be able to make calculations, make decisions a little bit faster than with just one CPU. So I'm going to give it 2. And that's all I'm going to do for now. It's the only thing I'm going to mess with just so we can get everything installed as is. And then when you're ready, we're going to click start. So we're mostly set up. It gives an overview here of everything that you decided upon. Again, you can change things. So if you want to go back into settings, I could give my system, a different amount of base memory. So remember, we set that. I told you it's not set in stone. Tons of options here. Not important right now at all. You can leave everything kind of default. You don't even have to change this processor thing. I just wanted to change it so it goes a little bit faster. And actually, because I'm going to actually give it 4 so it goes real fast. Just because it's okay if this computer messes up because I forgot I have 2 computers streaming. So then when you're ready, all you have to do is click start. It's going to give you a box. It's saying, hey, I'm booting up for the first time. I'm looking for a disk image to boot up so that I can install an operating system. I know that you want to install an operating system. I'm virtualizing that you are booting up to a disk, optical disk file, optical disk drive. Tell me where the file is that I should boot up from. So that ISO that we downloaded, that ISO file for Ubuntu, we can go ahead and we can open it up and we can select that. So mine is in documents, ISOs, wherever you downloaded yours to, that's where you can select. Now, I'm going to go ahead and install I'm going to install the desktop right now. The reason I'm going to install the desktop is as we get into the next hour where we're going through things like, you know what? Oh, whoops. I guess it just chose what it wanted. What happened? Oh no, it just put this down. I'm going to choose the desktop because again, as I think it'll make more sense. What happened? I think it will make more sense. Is it trying to start? All right, we broke something. We didn't really break something. I think we just waited up too long and it timed out. Let's see. I'm gonna kill 9, 4, 3, 5. All right, aborted. Now if I start, it's gonna mess it up, isn't it? No, it's not. All right, cool. I think it just timed out there. But I'm gonna go ahead and install the desktop because I think it'll make more sense to you when I can show you both the GUI and what's happening here? Why is this? Okay, there we go. Both the GUI and the command line at the same time. So I think it'll make more sense to put some context around what I'm doing in the command line as well as the GUI, which honestly I could also do from my desktop here. But I'm gonna go ahead and install the desktop for now. The server should have a very similar setup, actually. It won't be as pretty. You probably have to use your keyboard, but it should be pretty straightforward. You should just have to run through this and select many of the same options for the server. The server setup, actually, last time I went through it was really simple. It actually might have a graphical installer. Can't really remember, but cool. So when you first get in, it might be kind of weird. Right now you can see that the window is small and when I maximize it, nothing happens. So this is because you have a fresh computer, basically. You have fresh hardware, drivers and things things aren't installed. So you don't have your display drivers, you don't have a bunch of stuff. So you may have a really odd installation window, but you have two options here. You can try Ubuntu or you can install it. So if we tried it, it will basically be doing the live USB thing. So I could open up whatever applications were already installed. I could install new applications. I could do a lot of stuff, but as soon as we turned it off, all those things will be gone. And next time you boot it up, it will start from scratch. But all you need to do is click the install Ubuntu thing right here. So it's gonna ask about a keyboard layout. You probably want to leave that default. You probably don't need to change it. Mostly all the defaults should be fine for everything that we're gonna do here. And I'll click next. I know you can't see it. I can't make it any bigger until we get past this. But it asks for a few things: normal installation or minimal installation. So normal installation will give you a lot of the creature comfort. So Ubuntu is a distribution that was designed for the user, to make Linux kind of easy for the average person. So normal installation is going to give you a lot of things like web browsers, office applications, so you can write your papers and stuff, games, etc., media players. Minimal installation will not. It'll give you the basics, and anything you want to add on, you can add on. We're going to click normal. We're going to leave everything as is. Download updates while installing Ubuntu. You can do that if you want. I'm going to leave that off for now. Because I'm going to show you guys how to do updates. But you could have it download all the new updates that it has while it's installing, so they can get all those things installed for you, and install third-party software for graphics, Wi-Fi, hardware. Now, this one can get you into some trouble. This one can get you into some trouble. I usually don't check this. What this will do is it'll try to check your hardware and it'll try to download the appropriate things to help your hardware run. Graphics cards are notoriously a big issue on Linux. They can cause tons of problems. They can cause your computer to boot, but you do not be able to see anything. And you got to do all kinds of stuff to get out of that. So I would leave that off as well and go ahead and hit continue. There's gonna be some options here. Because we haven't done anything on this disk, leave it on the first one, erase disk and install Ubuntu. This is where you have to be, this is where if you're dual booting, this is the screen where you're gonna need to choose what to do. So if you're dual booting, you're actually going to select something else down here, and then it'll allow you to kind of go through the next process to choose how much space you want, things like that. But we're installing this. It says erase disk and install Ubuntu, but it's talking about the disk that VDI, that VirtualBox disk that you created. It's talking about that disk. So this isn't your main computer disk. It is that virtualized disk space that we talked about before. So it's okay to select that. Don't be afraid to do that. It's not going to delete all your stuff. Then it kind of just gives you this confirmation message. Go ahead and click continue. And then now it's installing in the background, and now it's just going to have us do some setup. So my time zone, it's already detected it as New York. It's going to ask for my name. So we're actually going to put in mastermind and password, whatever. Just throw in a password because I think it'll not let me put in a weak password. Can't see it. I'm not showing it to you. So I really don't care if you see it. It's almost password 1. But there's more letters than 1. And so then you can require your password to log in or log in automatically. I'm going to click log in automatically because I don't really care about this virtual machine. And I'm going to click continue. Now it's going to go ahead and it's going to finish installing so we can watch it install. And I think we'll have this all installed before 9. So that'll be good. And then we can really learn some Linux stuff. So what you've seen is a very quick intro into VirtualBox. There are a lot more caveats to VirtualBox than this. There's a lot of settings, there's a lot of things you can change, but keeping things like mostly default, you can get something up and running and working as is. So hopefully I didn't want you to know how to install something via VirtualBox. I wanted you to see how something was installed via VirtualBox. And now if you want to take the time to go do it yourself later, feel free, but hopefully that was like a quick introduction to it. All right, some people have thrown out Linode. Yes, Linode is like DigitalOcean. It's where you can go to get your own server. That'll just drop you into a Linux command line. That is all you need for everything that we're going to be doing. All you need is a command line. You do not need a whole desktop here at all. So definitely check that out if you can. Let's see. Seems like we have a lot of discussion about, looks like we have people trying to dual boot, all the partitioning setup. So I will say, if you have a computer that you don't rely on, so if you have a Windows PC or Linux, or a Mac, if you have a computer that you don't rely on, an extra computer lying around, it's the perfect candidate for Linux. And I would absolutely try to get Linux installed on there because in that process, nowadays, Linux is really good. So it will probably work right out of the box, or most things will work right out of the box. One of the Linux's problems is, maybe even just 6 or 7 years ago, is there's so many different pieces of hardware. Like you may install Linux and your Wi-Fi doesn't work because it doesn't have the right drivers for your Wi-Fi card or Bluetooth, or all kinds of things could go wrong. Like honestly, I learned so much in troubleshooting system issues trying to get Linux installed. It's crazy, but Linux has gotten really, really good, and you probably won't have any problems installing it. But if you have an old machine lying around, extra laptop that you don't mind, or even if it's your main laptop, but you don't really do much with it, you have a work laptop or something that you usually use, I say give it a go. Try to get Linux installed. Try dual booting. If not, just go ahead and install it completely and completely wipe whatever's on there. But or just just drop the $5 a month for a server that you can access from anywhere, that you can log into from any computer, and you can do whatever you want. I have my own server to do that stuff in as well. That's where I do most of my development and stuff. And when I'm messing around, when I'm deploying stuff, I do everything from an outside server, just because I use so many different computers. Makes it easier to do that, or like a Cloud9 instance, but we'll get there. All right, best part of virtual machines with a few modifications. The VM just utilizes the main system GPU. Very true. Why is your boot camp free? How you make money then? Great question. I'm Pikachu. One, the subscription model. I do make a little bit of money off of that, but it's honestly not really about that. It's about one, getting people interested in the tech, and I threw it out there before, and I'll have way more information on it pretty soon. But part of what I'll be doing also is help people get placed at companies. Yeah, helping people get placed at companies. If you head over to mastermind.io, not academy.mastermind, but just mastermind.io, there's some information there on placements and talent management in the engineering space. So we're going to be diving pretty heavily into that as well. So again, this is Mastermind Academy is for everyone. It's to help anyone who's interested in getting into tech. No barriers. Well, I mean, the barriers are you got to have some internet and a phone, at the very least, a phone to kind of watch on. But the goal is to get this to as many people as I can. It's not really, it's not to make money off of these streams. But one day I'll probably, I'm working some things out. I promise you, I will never push a bunch of merch on you guys. I won't push any merch on you guys ever. Like, I'll have merch because my company will have, like, Mastermind will have merch, and I'll give people access if they want it. But like, I'll never push merch on you. This will not be flooded with sponsors. I won't just be taking, oh, like this week where HyperX is sponsoring this. No, not that. I'll probably make some strategic partnerships with people in the industry who can provide support to this community. So people like AWS, things like that, as they come along. But the goal is not, oh yeah, and LaCroix. Thank you for saying that. LaCroix, LaCroix is the only non-tech sponsorship I'll ever take on here, or non-tech related sponsorship I'll ever take on here. We're getting that LaCroix sponsorship. I'm putting together like a plan for that now, and we're going all in. We're gonna have all the LaCroix. We're gonna be contacting the right people. We're getting that LaCroix sponsorship. But yeah, it won't. This is about learning, though. This is definitely about learning. All right. So let me finish going through these. Started out dual booting with a laptop I relied on. I got lucky and it worked. Yo, Aaron. Oh man, that's amazing. You are lucky. I have not had that kind of luck at all. Fingerprint readers are still iffy on Linux, very iffy on Linux. I got tricked in the first Mondragon, the first laptop I had that had a fingerprint reader on it. It worked. Like, I installed some application, it worked, and it always worked for me. And then I got a new laptop, and I could never get that fingerprint reader to work. It worked like twice, and it would never read my fingerprint again. And I had all kinds of trouble. It was bad. So fingerprint readers, if you rely on that, not good on Linux. Let's see. Love Linux. Only reason I'm dual booting is called playing games. So yes, I also love Linux, and the only reason I dual boot is because for two reasons: for games and for video editing now, and content creation. I'm cool with GIMP. I don't do a lot of photo work, but I'm cool with GIMP and Inkscape. But for video editing, it's not great on Linux. It works. It's not great, but I was in the Adobe space, but I switched over to DaVinci Resolve for video editing, and that is available on Linux. Hit or miss whether or not it'll work for you, but we'll get over. I mean, I might give it a try. What's the flavor tonight? We're using Ubuntu. We're using Ubuntu currently. Let's see. The session is brought to you by GNU Linux. Are you using tiling window manager? No. So right now I'm not using a special window manager on here now. I have like G-Tilix or something if I need to do something, but right now I'm not on here. All right, cool. So it's going to give you this final, it worked. It'll give you an installation complete message, and you can go ahead and click restart, and it will go ahead and it'll restart the instance. Now, here are some problems. So when you click restart, it's actually it's actually rebooting this virtualized computer you just created. So it's trying to reboot. Sometimes it fails. Sometimes the reboot doesn't work. Then you can just X out of it and go back in it. But it's possible that your installation will reboot and it'll send you back to the install screen. That is okay. You didn't break anything, and I'm going to show you right now how to stop it because this reboot very seldomly works for me. And I'm going to go ahead X. Go ahead and click power off. We don't want to save the state because it'll try to save it as it is right now. Go ahead and power it off and click OK. This is going surprisingly slow. All right. So now I'm actually going to go into settings here. I'm going to go to storage. So basically, again, this is a virtual computer. When we installed that ISO, it acted like it put it in the CD-ROM drive. It virtualized putting it in the CD-ROM drive. So sometimes when it starts back up, it will try to reboot. It'll try to reboot from that. And so right now, this is fine. Sometimes it shows it's still in here if it doesn't eject, but we look like we're okay here. If you see like where the disk is, if you see like the ISO file that you created, you can just click it and remove it, or right click it and click remove. But it looks like mine ejected, which is great. I think, hold on, actually, was I in the right place? Settings. Yeah, we should be fine. Cool. All right, so you click start again. It'll go ahead and it'll boot up, and then it'll give you a bunch of stuff up here. No biggie. You can just click the X or just leave it up there, because there are a lot of options inside of VirtualBox. What's my host? My host OS is Pop OS, which is basically a reskinned Ubuntu for System 76 laptops. Even though anyone can get it, you can install anything. I prefer it to Ubuntu. Yeah, I prefer it to Ubuntu for sure. But so it's basically Ubuntu. Now we get dropped into Ubuntu. We get a little what's new screen. Next. I'm just gonna click next. I could just delete out of this. So now we've got our desktop here. I'm gonna, by default, I'm gonna try to make my screen bigger. So what I can do is, I know that to get to my display stuff, I can just type in displays. So to get to all applications, you can either click right here or hit the Windows key and just type in displays. And I cannot type. All right, I'm gonna click on here, and I'm gonna see if by default I can increase my resolution to something higher. I can't even see it. I'm gonna make it smaller, scoot it over. All right, so I can. So let's go 1680 by 1050. No, I like 16 by 10 is fine. All right, so that's not gonna work because I'll click that in a second. I actually want a different one so that it all shows on the screen. I don't know why 1920 by 1080 is not on here. All these are whack sizes. All right, so I changed it to a resolution that fits on here. I should be able to Control Plus and make things bigger in a second. All right, so I can click some updates here. It'll give me some options. We're not gonna click on anything right now. The first thing, if you're doing this locally, if you're trying to install a virtual machine locally, there's a lot of caveats to a desktop system. There's a lot of things you can do. So there's this, if you go to devices up top and insert guest edition CD image, basically what this will do is, there's these CD images that are created by VirtualBox that, put a bunch of drivers and a bunch of things on there to allow everything to work properly on your virtual machine. So again, things like my resolution, let me get back down here. Things like my resolution, all kinds of stuff is kind of managed by this guest edition CD. It'll get everything installed. So if you click that, it'll go through and it'll download some stuff. It sucks because while this is downloading, the server that exists between my laptop and my desktop, which is right above this, it usually dies, but I can use my mouse over here. Downloads haven't been working too good on my laptop, like, 'cause I don't have a good connection from where I'm at, but I am on Ethernet now on my main desktop, so we are good there. But I'm gonna click cancel. So you would do that to get a better desktop experience, but that's how you get a virtual machine installed. So if you installed the server version instead of the desktop version, you would be dropped into just basically this. Whoops, how do I get back down here? You'll basically be dropped into a terminal, and it will be full screened, and it wouldn't even have this stuff around it. It would just be black and white, and you'll be dropped in right here, and it probably would give you a login prompt or something like that for you to get logged into. That's all you will need to do to get a virtual machine set up. So just like that, just same way you would install like Windows or Linux on your real machine, you can install it in this Type 2 hypervisor. VirtualBox is a Type 2 hypervisor, and you now have an operating system that you can play around with. So that is, yeah, that's how we would do that. But I'm not going to use this VirtualBox or this virtual machine for to show you the Linux stuff, only because a lot of the stuff isn't set up and we would have to take a long time to set that stuff up. But you can follow along in your VirtualBox. It's also worth noting, I didn't talk about it, but it's also worth noting that the number of virtual machines that you can install onto your system depends on the hardware that you have available to you. So I could install as many as I want, but I would only be able to run because you can run more than one virtual machine at a time. I could start this Windows 10 one, then I could start up the Stream Linux one, but every single time one of those opens, it consumes the resources that it needs. So if I only have 8 gigs of RAM and I start up Windows 10 and it uses up 4, and I start up Stream Linux and it uses up 4, but my main operating system needs some, I'll have some problems. Same thing for the CPU cores, same thing for disk space. I can only use those finite resources that I have available to me. If I don't do that, then if I don't pay attention to that, then I may not be able to run what I want to run. But again, you can run as many of them as you can at a time. I think that is important to know. But that was super simple. We just click through some buttons. So that's why VirtualBox is so cool. Some of the enterprise options are a lot more complicated than that, but essentially you're doing the same thing. You go ahead and take an operating system file, you stick it into basically, you first carve out some space. So you use your hypervisor, the hypervisor being VirtualBox or VMware or something like that. You carve out the space that you want on your server. So you say, I want a virtual machine that has 4 gigs of RAM and 100 gigs of hard drive space and 2 CPU cores. And it carves out that space for you. You take that installation file, you install an operating system on it, and now you have yourself a virtual machine. That virtual machine can run any operating system that you want. But yeah, you have the virtual machine. You can run as many as you can before you use up all of the resources on the host machine, on the host machine. So cool. Very, very straightforward. Again, we didn't touch a lot of the settings and things, but the start to finish is actually pretty straightforward. You just click a bunch of buttons, and now you have another computer basically running inside of your computer. Again, the goal's not focus on the concepts. The goal's not that you know exactly how to do that. Is that you know that you can take a piece of software like this and that you can install another operating system inside of it and virtualize another running computer instance. So cool. Let's take a break there. I'm gonna drink some of this water. Take that in. We're gonna take a minute or so break. I'm gonna answer some of these questions. Then we're gonna actually dive into Linux. Linux is what's fun. Linux is what's important. And it's gonna be the stuff it's gonna be the stuff that you want to know. Like, this might seem cool. You might be trying to follow along and you might be getting frustrated that you can't get this installed. Linux is the stuff that you're gonna want to know. That's definitely the cooler stuff. That's the stuff that's going to make you feel like you're doing something, a lot of instant gratification. I just installed flagship Ubuntu. I think I installed 18.10, I think. Not really sure which one I installed. I'm actually interested. I have no idea what I'm running locally. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. I meant to do just uname, tell me, cat, Etsy, issue. Oh, so I'm running 1910 locally. So I'm actually running Pop OS, but you can see here that even in Pop OS, so I'm running Pop OS 1910, but even in Pop OS, when you actually select what it is, or you try to see what it is in the operating system, it lets you know that it's Ubuntu, because again, it's basically a reskinned Ubuntu. There. I had a nuke and pave my Solus install. That sucks. That really sucks. Been having systemd issues all day. The final straw. Yeah. Well, again, I love Pop OS, but I do like Solus because I like the budgie desktop. Are you going to install, Adam? Are you going to install the budgie desktop environment on your Pop OS instance? Because I really do like budgie, and that's why I would use Solus. Yeah, Zero's Theory, Pop OS, it really is. Like at first I thought it was gimmicky at first. So when it first came out, I didn't download it. I was like, another distro. I had hopped around from so many. Everyone was like, oh, Linux Mint's better. All these other things are better. But then I bought a System 76 laptop, and I chose Pop OS by default instead of Ubuntu just to give it a go. And it was fine. Like, it's fine. It was Ubuntu, but it seemed a little cleaner. And again, they had some stuff for their computers specifically that was on it. But then I used Pop OS to install it on my desktop. I saw Pop OS on my desktop, which had an NVIDIA card, and I've never had an easier install ever. Had an easier install for an NVIDIA. On an NVIDIA machine, on a machine that had an NVIDIA graphics card, and I was hooked ever since. It was so easy. It worked with my desktop had Wi-Fi at the time, and it like picked up my Wi-Fi card and everything. I had never had that smooth of an experience, literally ever, and that is the only reason I speak so highly of it now. What do I do with my ISO in VirtualBox? Do I just import the file? So I think you saw. Hopefully you saw when we were in here and we hit new. Well, it's not going to show it. Actually, it is new. Give it a name. When I click next, I'll click next, create. Once you get through all the initial setup and you click new, not new, and you click run. Once you click start, this is where you select your ISO file. So when you select start on the initial boot of your instance, you go ahead and find your ISO file, and you can go ahead and you can get it installed in there. All right, we don't need that. That's going to fail because I told it was Windows 7, and it's going to cause all kinds of problems. Oh yeah. The firmware update thing is amazing. So Pop OS, so System 76 has their own engineers that develop like firmware and stuff for their laptops, like custom firmware and things for their laptop to make sure that their hardware works properly. But other setups benefit from that as well. All right, so let's learn the Linux stuff. So there are no slides for this because we're going to be all hands-on. So I'm actually going to go out to Bash. So I don't want to be with the ZSH right now. But everything we're going to be doing tonight for the rest of the night is from the command line. And I'll go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. What's happening here? No. Ooh. How do I? This is how you get to tilde. But that's how you get to backtick. It's function shift. I actually don't know on my keyboard how to get to tilde. All right, I do know I set it to the escape key. Function changes the escape key to the tilde key. But, I have to use left shift. Right shift auto completes for some reason. Left shift goes tilde. So learning something new just for my new keyboard. Yeah, easy. Okay, just like that. So not Python. I just want to vim /hyper. I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see it a little better. File size. Let's make this. Make it 24. All right. A little bit bigger, a little bit better. Can you all see that pretty clearly? It looks like you can see it. I think you can see it before, but I think let's make it a little bit better. How does that look? Actually, what is my Vim color scheme? My Vim color scheme is like 1 dark. Oh man, it's gonna take me a while to get this this muscle memory down. It is. Oops, color. Man, I'm struggling. Yeah, it's 1 dark. Color scheme is 1 dark for Vim. Looks pretty good. I like it. All right, so let's clear. Let's talk about some cool Linux stuff, or let's get started learning some Linux stuff. So let me actually pull up all the things I said we're gonna get through tonight. All right, we're gonna get through command line navigation. So navigation is simply how do you move around? How do you get forward, backward? How do you get to this folder and that folder? We're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about users and groups, file permissions, and how to manipulate text. So let's start with command line navigation. You've seen me do a lot in here, and so you've seen me do a lot of this stuff already. But the first thing I want you to know is that Linux is simply a bunch of files, folders and files, and executables. So everything in Linux is basically a file. This is a Unix started this, but everything's basically a file, and they exist in different folder structures, etc., etc. Folders, just like you know in Windows or Mac, so that's no big deal there. But it's really everything in Linux is just files and folders and executables. Those executables are files. Don't let this screen scare you at all. I'm going to show you. This screen is just a representation of the GUI. So the graphical user interface, the thing that you're used to, this and this they're the same thing. The rest of your computer is the same thing. You can manage the entirety of the computer from here. In fact, half of like everything you're basically doing in the GUI when you click on things is basically just issuing commands here. What is here? What is this? So this is your terminal. Your terminal runs something called a shell. A shell is what we call an interpreter. So for the programming piece of this, we talked about compiled language versus interpreted languages. Anyone who's in the Python course, you know we get the REPL interpreter there. This is the same thing basically. And what this does is it interprets your commands and makes the appropriate changes or takes the appropriate actions on your machine. There are different shells. The one that I'm running right now is something called Bash. Bash is, I'm not running Bash. So I'm not running Bash because my default shell is ZSH. We'll talk about that in a second. Almost every system you log into will be running Bash by default. We're running Bash by default. ZSH, if you're on a Mac, if you're on a new Mac or you recently updated your Mac, ZSH is going to be the shell that you're using. So if you do echo $shell, if you're on a Mac, you'll probably get ZSH or Bash. They both do mostly the same things, but ZSH has it's newer and has some creature comforts. Again, it has some tools available for you so that you can do things a little bit easier, so that users can do things a little bit easier. I don't love those things. Anyone who gets comfortable with ZSH first, if you ever have to log into a server, you probably will be confused with a few things because you won't have all those things available to you. But again, I like Bash. We are using Bash right now, even though our default shell is ZSH. Don't sweat that. There are a bunch of different ones. These are the two most common, Bash and ZSH. So let's start with the command line navigation. So I'm going to give you guys some commands, write them down, but the thing I want you to take in is what they do. You can always Google the commands later. Actually, I think I gave a command line cheat sheet for everyone that is in the Google Classroom. But let's start here. Let's go with, we're gonna type in the first command we're gonna learn. And it's interesting that we're gonna use this one first, but this is the first one that you're gonna learn. You're gonna learn a command called pwd, and you can go ahead and type that in and you can hit enter. What pwd is it orients you. So it lets you know where you are on the system. It shows you your exact spot. It stands for present working directory. So go ahead and write that down. But yes, pwd. It's how you always are going to orient yourself. Uptime, we've been streaming for an hour and 33 minutes. This started at right before 8 p.m. Eastern time. So I don't have an uptime command, but we've been streaming for, hour and 33 minutes. So pwd, that's how you orient yourself. If you ever get lost or don't know where you are, pwd is how you find out where you are, present working directory. So it says I'm in /home /A Brooks. Now, that just means I'm in the file path. So there's a folder. Basically, whenever you see these slashes, that means there was a folder. If you see a slash after something, it means it's a folder. So I'm in /home /A Brooks. So basically, there's an A Brooks folder that's inside of this home directory, and that's where I am. So let me show you what that means from here. In here, in the computer that you're used to, there's a home thing right here. So home is one directory. And in here, there should be an A Brooks. So actually, that's interesting. That's not going to work. In here, there should be an A Brooks thing. So the reason why this is not going to show what it's supposed to show. Let me see if I can. Can you go back from here? Let me see something real quick. So this setup right here is actually showing, it says home. It does say home. It is my home. This home that we're looking at here is actually this file right here, which is home A Brooks. So let me show you what that means or why that is. So if I do echo home, it says basically there's a variable called home and it references home A Brooks. So these are the same locations. I know it's confusing. I'll explain that a little bit deeper, but that's not important to know right now for navigation. What is important to know is that the home that is in this thing here is actually home A Brooks. So if I do an ls, so if you want to see what is in the contents of a directory, so we're in a directory right now. We're in the directory home A Brooks. How do we know? Because we did a pwd, which is present working directory. It told us we were in home A Brooks. And then we did an ls in here. So we wanted to see what was in this directory that we're in. So we typed in ls, which is a list command. There's a bunch of variations of this, but it shows me a bunch of files. Some of them are files, some of them are folders. I'll show you how to differentiate between them shortly. But you can see here there's documents and downloads and dot files and persons.json and Lotion and desktop. So Lotion is just my Notion app. It's this Notion app, but it's for Linux, so they call it Lotion. But take a look at these files in these folders. Just so you know, everything that's in purple is actually a folder. And again, I'll show you how to see that later. She puts the lotion on her skin. That's why I had to tell you guys what lotion was before people were like, lotion, like what is that? So everything that's in purple here and in bold is actually a directory, but that's not important. Just wanted to tell you for your own context. But look at these files, but then look at these files. All right, don't we see, actually let's put them side by side. Don't we see a lot of the same things here? So if not everything, we see bin and bin. These aren't in alphabetical order, but these are. We see boost note, and do we see boost note here? We see boost note here. And we see, let's go down a little bit, Lightworks. Do we have Lightworks on here? We have Lightworks on here. So everything you see to the left is exactly what you're seeing on the right, because again, this is just, everything over here is just representation of what's over here. So this is basically, we're in the same directory right now. So if we were to go into something like documents, you'll see me type LL a lot instead of LS, and it'll put things out a little differently. Actually, let's stick on LS for a few minutes. So that list command, it does a bunch of different things for you. It lists the contents of a directory, but you can add a lot of things. You can add some modifiers to it. So in Linux, your commands, you can add in these things called flags. You can add in these flags. They're really called command line arguments, but people will call them flags. And so whenever you see me type in something and you see me type a dash, this is where I'm entering a flag. This is a modifier. So ls does one thing, but the one ls command I want to teach you today, the only modifier that I want to teach, well, two modifiers I want to teach you. The one modifier I want you to teach you today is the -L. So the -L allows you to do a long list. So this allows you to get the output in a different, to give you a different output than what we're currently looking at. So if I do ls-L, instead of displaying everything just kind of right here, like in the big chunks, in these columns, it spits them all out in a single column with more information. We'll talk about what that information is right now. That's not important, but it spits them out this way. I think that's an easier way to read. Yeah, I think it's an easier way to read. The do type LL like we're doing, like if we're doing Python. I'm lost here. Type LL. Oh wow, you taught me something new. I've been doing Linux for a long time. I didn't know type did that. Man, that's great. That's very interesting. So that type command just spits out what an alias is. So when you see me type in LL, basically when I type in LL, Linux is actually reposting it, or the way it's interpreting it is actually this. So I have an alias LL set up, and it's alias to ls-alf. So that's a longer flag. Don't worry about what that does. Well, I can't believe I never knew about that. And I've been doing Linux for over 10 years for sure. Didn't know that. So thank you. Learned something new. Wow, that's really cool. But again, ls-l shows you stuff in a long listing format. And then I want you to know about ls-a. Now you can combine flags. So I can do LA and it just combines flags, but ls-a, this actually looks different there's way more files here than there were before. Why? You see all these files with a dot? Basically, ls-a is for all. And so basically all shows you all the files in a directory, including the ones that are hidden. In Linux, hidden files in folders you can tell what they are. They have a dot. They're preceded with a dot. Or they're prepended with a dot. So anything that has a dot is actually a hidden file. So you wouldn't see it by default. In here, in this structure, you would have to right click and click show hidden files, or however you get hidden files to show. Those are hidden files. So those are the two things I want you to remember. Well, three things. ls shows you a listing of the contents of a directory or a folder, just a folder. ls-l is for a long listing. This gives you additional information about the stuff in that folder. Also, it does it in a long single column. And then ls-a shows all files, including the hidden ones, and the hidden ones have a dot that prepend them. And again, this is what it looks like if I combine them. ls-la, same thing, but now you can see all these dot files are here. All right, we learned two things. We learned where we are. So pwd, present working directory, shows me where I am. And then ls lets me see what is where I am. Now let's learn how to move. So we haven't navigated yet. We learned how to orient. We learned how to know where we are. But how do we move? So let's say we wanted to go to where our downloads are. Let's say we downloaded a file and we want to get to where our downloads are. So let's go ahead and do an ls. And so I know that the downloads file is here. Let's look at it from here. So for my home folder, which is home A Brooks, the downloads file is here, and I can click on the downloads and I can see all the files that I downloaded. So I have a movie here, I have 2 movies here, 3 movies here. Ignore why those movies are there. We have Cabin in the Woods and Joker. But we have a lot of other files here, things like Chrome OS Dark Zip, things like that. So let's say I just downloaded this image of this leopard and I want to get to it from the command line. How do I navigate over to that space? Let's go ahead. Whoa, what's happening here? The mouse is too sensitive. All right, let's navigate to it. I know that the downloads folder is here. So the way that you move between directories in Linux is the cd command. So cd stands for change directory. And so you basically type in cd to tell it that you want to move directories or you want to change the directory that you're in. And then you've got to give it the path to the directory that you want to go to. We're going to talk about paths right after this, but you have to tell it where you want to go. So I want to go into downloads. So I just type in downloads. And you type in downloads, even if you don't put the slash, it'll go to downloads. But it filled it in for me because I used something I shouldn't be using yet for this course. But if you click CD downloads, it goes to downloads. Now, it probably will tell you that you moved into download. So this is your PS1, this is your prompt. And basically, sometimes, not on every distro, it'll tell you where you currently are. So that pwd command, it'll tell you where you are basically. And we'll talk about why this is here instead of this in a second too. But if it doesn't, again, you can type in pwd to see where you're at. And now I know that I'm in the downloads folder. And now if I do an ls here, I can see those same things that I saw before. So we should see, you know, Joker, the movie Joker in there. But yeah, so now we're into our downloads folder. Now, how would we've moved into our downloads folder. Let's say we want to get back. Actually, let's go into the Joker folder. We know that the Joker file is called this. I'll copy and paste it because I shouldn't be using tab complete yet. And we're gonna cd into the Joker folder and see what's in there. I did it. I said I wasn't gonna do it, and then muscle memory took over. I'm gonna paste. All right, so now let's see what's in this Joker folder. ls, and you can see here we've got a movie file and we've got an info file now. All right, so we got to where we wanted to go, but let's say we want to get back to where we were originally. How do you move backwards? So I taught you how to move into a directory or change into a directory. So we could use that again. So yes, we're going to use that same command again to get back to where we were. But how do we traverse backwards? So I almost hate saying traverse backwards because then that gets you thinking about files and directories in a weird way. But we did move forward. We moved from home to downloads to Joker. All these folders are in each other. So the downloads folder is in my home folder and the Joker folder is in the downloads folder. How do we get back? Hack's gonna get hacks. I love it. This is not, no. This is not my work computer. This is my personal computer. This is a personal laptop. Or it was a personal laptop before I started using it for this. And you know, I mean, we're not gonna hide who we are out here. I purchase everything that I want to purchase. Okay. Big placeholder names. Yeah. So to get back, let's how do we get backwards? So the way we move backwards is a dot and then another dot. So 2 dots will move us backwards 1 directory. So we're in downloads Joker. We hit enter. Now you can see we've moved backwards 1. Let's do a pwd. We've moved back out of the Joker directory into the downloads directory. Now, so what if we want to get back to our home folder? We just do cd ... and that'll take us back 1 more. If we do pwd, we're no longer in the Joker folder. So we move forward and we move back. And again, I hate to say forward and back. We moved into a new directory, into 2 new directories, and then we move back. So now we know how to do, how to move. We know how to move. So this is literally, that's everything you need to, that's how you navigate directories. If you want to move into your documents, into a folder that you created in your documents, you use the cd command. If you ever need to go back a directory, you do cd ... Now let's talk about what, like when I say back and I say forward and the Linux folder structure, let's talk about what that means. So Linux has, we're gonna get to touch soon. Why PDD and PWD instead of CWD? Because CWD is not always available, as you can see right here. PWD is always available anywhere. PWDs will always be available. It was the original command. CWD is only available, I think there's a CWD package you can install, but I think that's generally a paradigm for a lot of applications like Docker, etc. But yeah, CWD is not a default Linux thing. Yep. But PWD will be everywhere, not even just Debian. PWD will be available in Bash. It's a Bash thing. So let's talk about the Linux folder structure. So I told you everything in Linux is a file and a directory. So in that, in everything being a file and a directory, basically you have these top level directories with other folders and files all underneath, and it goes pretty deep inside of there. Actually, I don't like looking at it this way. I don't like looking at it this way either. So in Linux, there are two ways to get to the files and things that you want. Or there's two ways to tell Linux where it is that you're trying to go or what you're trying to do. So you can reference things via two ways. There's something called the absolute path, and there's something called relative paths. So pathing is very, very important, especially from the command line. It's something that's extremely important to understand. And so that's why when I said to go back one and go forward one, we're following a path. So right now we're in the home directory. So we type in pwd, home A Brooks. But then again, I can do an LL and I can see what other folders are available for me to move forward per se. And so let's say I want to get back to where I was. Let's say I want to get back to that Joker folder. I can do one of two things. I can tell my computer how to get there from where I am now, or I can give it the entire file path from the root of the computer. So what is the root of the computer? You can see here when I type in pwd, every single file path, no matter where you go on your computer, it will always start with slash. No matter what, it will always start with a slash. And slash actually is the root of your computer. So I could go cd slash. You can see here it changes. And I'm gonna do an ls here. And now you can see like the root. Sorry about that, let me get some water. And now you can see this is the root of my computer. This is these are all the things that kind of build my operating system. I pasted one of the assignments, one of the resources I posted in the Google Classroom explains this folder structure and kind of what everything is in here. But this is like all the files and folders that are necessary for this computer to run. This is the very top level of the computer. And everything kind of everything is underneath all of these files. So slash is always the root of your computer. And so I can refer to anything in any of these folders. I can refer to it starting with a slash in its whole way. So let's say, like I said, we were in home. So let's say I want to get all the way back. The path all the way back to the Joker folder is slash home, slash download, A Brooks, slash downloads, downloads, and then Joker. So this is the entire path from the root of the system to the folder that we want to get into. Yeah, and so it goes through 1, 2, 3, 4 folders to get to where we want to go. And then if I hit that, it takes me all the way to my Joker files. Now, I learned CD minus a while ago, or last boot camp, but CD minus just takes you to the last location you were at. Don't worry about remembering that one for now. But if you want to write it down and add it to your repertoire, or your arsenal of commands, go ahead and add it. But, well, or just a minus by itself, well, that didn't work. That must be a alias. That didn't work for me. Might be a CSH thing. Yep. Okay, on Bash, that's not a thing. Cool. So you guys can see how every time I do CD minus, it takes me back to the other directory that I was in. So PWD, I'm all the way in here, and CD minus will take me all the way back to home, which is cool. It's a pretty fast way to get back to where you want to be. But let's say I was in documents. Let's say I was in slash home, A Brooks, documents. All right, this is a completely different directory. We've never been in here ever. So I'm in a different location than we've ever been. And so how do we get to where we just were? So if we want to get back to this Joker folder, you can always use this full path. So a full path, again, the absolute path, full path or absolute path will always start with a slash, always. So if you see it's starting with a slash, you know it's an absolute path and you have to put in the absolute path. A relative path will not use the slash. Relative path will never use a slash. Well, it'll never start with a slash. It might start with a dot slash, but it'll never start with a slash. So you can always use this. So from where I am now, I could type in CD and the full path to this folder, and it would take me there. But the other way I could do it is right now I am in the documents folder. I already know the path to this. Like I already know where it is, but if you didn't, you might have to do a couple things. The same we did CD ... We can also do LS ... and see what's in the folder behind us, or the folder one backwards. And so I know downloads is in there. So I can do the other way. I can use the relative path. So again, relative path is relative to my current location. So where is this folder or file at relative to my location? Where's my location? My location is in /home/abrooks/documents. Relative to me, I would have to go backwards one. So I know I got to go back one into abrooks. And then from here, I can go into downloads, and then I can go into Joker. So again, the relative path will never start with a slash, and it is the path to something relative to my current location. And again, sometimes it takes a little bit of time to really get down and really understand. I think I posted something in the classroom about that as well. But write down absolute path and write down relative path, and read some articles on it, watch some videos on it. It is very, very important that you know the differences between the two, that you can identify them accordingly. It's super, super duper important in Linux. Super duper important in Linux, because it's the basic underlying structure of Linux are these paths, these file pathings. The way that the file system is set up is very, very important. So definitely do that. There we go. Nope. There we go. All right. Now, ignore the tilde. You see me type the tilde a lot. Ignore that for now too. I think we go over that a little bit later. What do we have next? So that really is command line navigation. So again, do PWD, see where you are, do an LS to see where you can go, and then move that way. So you can move one at a time. You don't have to move a bunch at a time, and you get into documents and do an LS, and now I have new folders and files, and let's go into mastermind. And you type in where you want to go and do an LS and see what's in here. And now I want to move into about us, and I do an LS to see what's in here. And I'm like, nowhere. I don't think there's anywhere for me to go, but I want to go back one, and maybe I want to go into and do an LS and see what else is there. So 3 commands will allow you to kind of get around, will allow you to navigate. PWD to know where you are, LS to see what is, to list what is in the current place that you're at and let you know where you can go from here, or directly from here. And then CD to kind of get to where you want to go. 3 commands that I want you to focus on now. There are more, but those are the main 3 that you need to kind of get around. And then you need to know absolute paths versus relative paths. Again, that full path starting with slash is an absolute path. This is it's the directions from your house. It's directions, basically, absolute path is directions from your house to Best Buy. If you want to get to Best Buy, Google Maps, you put in Google Maps, takes you from your house to Best Buy. The relative path is if you were on the way already and you stopped at 7-Eleven to get a Slurpee, when the directions update and give you how to get there from the 7-Eleven to the Best Buy, that is the relative path. So it's relative to where you are when originally you were looking at it from the complete path to your original destination. So that's, I don't know, maybe that's a good way to explain it, maybe not. But again, relative to where you are, or absolute. Think slash and no slash. And that's command line navigation. So 3 things. All you need is 3 things for now. Now, we're gonna get into, let's do, you need to know users and groups before you know permissions. Does anyone have any questions about paths or moving around or navigating on the command line? Does anyone have any questions about those things? Are you a Mac user? I do use Mac for work. Not really a Mac user. I actually just got that Mac, and I've used Mac a couple times for work. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm a Bash user, and Mac has Bash on it, so yeah. Server administration, I used to. If you're asking me, you might be asking Zero's Theory. I know how to administer servers. I do not do server administration right now because the project that I'm on, the setup that we have is we don't really have any servers, or I guess we do server administration, but it's through code. So I don't log into any servers almost ever at all. I do everything through CloudFormation or Terraform or something else to make that work. Feels like lots of people are using Tmux for remote server admin. Yes, Tmux is amazing. You should learn it if you're going to be doing any of this stuff. Tmux is really, really, really good. What if you have a file and a folder both named the same? That is an excellent question. I love that. Yes, if you have a file and a folder both named the same thing. This is great. So let's go back. So we're in the mastermind folder. So let's make a file. So the way you create a file, and you're gonna learn this a little bit later, but we'll learn it now. The way that you create an empty file is the touch command. So if you type in touch, if you type in touch and then the name of a file, so our file, let's just say file.txt. Let's just call it file, touch file. And we do an ls. We see that I said it was an empty file. You don't know this yet, but this is the size of the item. And so we put up 0 here. We put up a 0. It says 0 here because it has nothing in it. But let's also make a directory called file. So when you do, to make a directory in Linux, it's mkdir. So this is extra stuff, but write this stuff down because we're going to be going over this in part 2, I believe. But if you want to make a directory, it's mkdir to make a directory, and this will make it empty. This will create an empty directory. So touch is how you create an empty file. Mkdir is how you create an empty directory. So let's create one called file, and it will not let you do that because it already exists. So this is super important because Linux is actually, let's do this just to show you. Linux is case sensitive. So it will allow me to create capital F file because it is a completely different thing than lowercase file. So if I do an LL again, I have the folder named file, and you can see here it's a folder because it has a slash on the end. I can show you how to get that to happen. That's one of the flags. That's one of the flags in the ls command, but it'll let me create one with lowercase and one with uppercase. It will not allow me to do that. So make dir file, make dir first, then touch dir or touch file. Let's see. Does that work? That would be interesting if it works. So let's switch it around. I'm going to rm-rf. So rm is how you remove stuff. I'm going to remove file and the folder file. I'm going to make the directory first. So actually, let's go ahead and let's do this again. Let's do this. Darn it. Move file to, I want it to be lowercase. I don't know why. I don't like uppercase stuff. So I have a directory now, a file, and I'm going to touch file. And I actually don't know what that did. So I'm actually it's screwy, no errors, but touch doesn't create a file. That's very, very interesting. I love this. Wouldn't let me make the file just a directory. It'll touch the file, but it doesn't exist. Yeah, that is very interesting. I didn't know it did that. That is what happened. Let me see something. Okay, doesn't do anything weird. That's very interesting. I'd never seen that before. That's the first time I've ever seen that in my life, and that's very weird. I don't like that at all. Updated last modified time. Oh, let's see. So file 952. Let's go ahead and let's touch file again. Yes. Oh, because you're touching it. That makes perfect sense. So maybe touch doesn't actually create a file. Maybe touch just touches the file. Man, touch. Let's see. Oh, touch does not create files. You guys just blew my mind. Wow. I learned something new. That's 2 new things I learned. So I told you touch creates an empty file. Touch will create an empty file, but touch does not create an empty file. That's not its job. It will create one, but it changes file timestamps. I did not, man. And I've been using Linux for so long. I learn something new every day. All right. But again, everything in Linux is a file, like you guys said. Yeah, 2 things today. That is, man, this is great. I love this. I'm smarter. All right, so touch will do that. So that's very interesting. I like that. Now, what were we doing? We were doing command line navigation. Oh yeah, so someone gave me something to try, so we tried that out. Thank you. I'm assuming it's Aaron C. Hall and not Aaron Chall. I'll definitely follow you on Twitter, for sure. All right, we moved around. You guys learned a couple extra stuff right there. That's actually good stuff for command line navigation, I guess. So touching, creating empty files, again with the touch command, or making new directories with mkdir test, and this will make a new directory called test. And I'll give you one more. If you want to remove that directory, again, you saw me do rm-rf, but there's also an rmdir command, but rmdir will only work if the directory is empty. So rmdir, so mkdir is make directory, and rmdir is remove directory. So that's how you can create directories and remove directories if you need to. So two more commands you can write down. Now, I know the amount of commands can be overwhelming. Again, write them down. You don't need to memorize all of them. You'll just like, by default, you'll start to memorize them over time, but you need to know that you can do things like you need to know that you can make a directory and that you can remove one. So whenever you do need to do it, if you don't know the command, you just Google, like, how do I create a directory in Linux? How do I remove a directory in Linux? How do I create an empty file? How do I create a non-empty file? How do I create a file with stuff in it? And so you can do that to be able to go ahead and do that. I just tried to echo into it, didn't work. What did you try to echo into? Did you try to echo into the file? You can't. I don't think you can echo into a dir. All right, cool. So let's do the next piece. Users and groups. Now, users are the people logged into the system. So when I logged in as A Brooks or Mastermind. I logged in as A Brooks. The user on your computer is a user of the computer. It's a user of the computer. Now, how do you find out what your user is? You can type in a cool command called "Who am I?" Who am I will let you know who you are. So I'm logged in as A Brooks currently. Yes, and so it'll also probably tell you in your prompt somewhere. So it says A Brooks here. This is, you did win. You typed it in right before I typed it in. So who am I? I'm A Brooks. And so whoever you are, it will allow you to do that. So I'm going to show you something really quick. Sudo minus. And if I do a who am I? All right, so what you just saw me do, the on your computer, on your Windows computer, whenever you right click and go to run as administrator, or on Mac, I don't know what it is on Mac, but the administrator user on Linux, that user is root. So you probably heard sometime before, like the root user. The root user is the person with all the power. The root user is the administrators. Run as administrator, that is the root user, and I just changed to the root user. This su command is how you change to any user, really, but there's no other users on this machine right now. But who am I shows you who you are, and it's important to know your user for a number of different reasons, but I'll show you that when we get into permissions. But what else? If you want to see your users, you can also do, I can do etsy password if you want to see it. I don't care if anyone knows things about this computer. There's also a file in here called, there's a password file that will show you all the users as well as some other things. Yes, there are a bunch of users here, but only one user who I can log in as. All these, you can see all these have this no login at the end. Not important right now at all. Just want to show you that. Didn't tell you what the cat command did yet, but let's see. All right, groups. So there's users and there's groups. So groups are simply these roles basically that multiple users can be a part of. I'm gonna show you how to add users and stuff in a second, but groups are just this thing that people can be a part of. And why do they matter? So if I do an ls here, if I do an ls-l, let me do that instead. And I show you all these things here. You can actually see my username right here. And you can actually see it twice. Why is it there twice? So whenever you do a long listing, whenever you do an ls-l, it'll show you a bunch of stuff. Everything over here, these are user permissions. Everything right here are user permissions. You don't know how to read those, not important. Skip this aisle. This is the one you care about next. And this is your user. This is the user that owns that file or directory. And this is the group that owns that file or directory. So two different things, the user and the group, and they both have different permissions. Users can be a part of any number of groups. So there's users and the groups. Now, how do you add a new user? To add a new user, you use the user add command. So I can add a user called stream user. I'm gonna call it stream user with a capital U. It's a dumb name, but it doesn't let me do it. So I type it in, it clicks out, it spits out permission denied. Cannot lock eti password, try again later. Whenever you see permissions issues in Linux, this is always because you need to, think about your Windows computer or your Mac, whenever you try to install something or do something and it's like, hey, now you gotta be an administrator to do this task. This is one of those things. And to do that, what you have to do is you have to type in something called sudo or sudo. I don't know which one it is. This is the same thing like for everyone watching the Python bootcamp. This is like the tuple discussion, which I think is tuple. I think it's sudo. Actually, I think it's sudo. But I used to say sudo, but now I say sudo. And this is basically, super user do. So this is like super user at root or super user do this action. So whenever you need to escalate your privileges, so whenever you need to run something as administrator or escalate your privileges, you type in sudo, and I can just type in the same thing that I typed in before. So user add stream user. I'm not even going to capitalize. And you can see it spit me back out to my prompt. It didn't give me any confirmation or anything. Almost no commands in Linux are going to give you any type of confirmation that you did it properly. Oh yeah, definitely have to update. I don't know why I didn't do that. So yes, sudo is how you escalate your privileges to allow you to be able to do something. So every time you see this permission denied, think about that. So actually, I'm gonna do this in another tab because I need to. I never did this. Actually, I'm fine here, but for everyone who just installed Linux onto their machine, the first thing you want to do when you install Linux is do an apt, or if you're on Ubuntu, is do an apt update. I'm so used to typing apt-get. Now, it's gonna give me an error. Again, whenever you see these like permission denied things, I want you to see this because you're gonna see it a lot. You're gonna see it a whole lot. Oh yeah, it did. Thank you. Whenever you see apt update, whenever you see again these permission denied, think sudo apt update. Now I won't have any updates here. It's gonna ask you to type in your password almost whenever you type in sudo. And go ahead and type your password in. You're not gonna see it typed on the screen. It's just gonna be blank. Type it in, hit enter. If you got it wrong, it'll let you know that you got it wrong, and it'll go do some stuff. If this is your first time installing Linux, it'll take a long time to update. But yeah, sudo just allows you to escalate your privileges. So if you ever see permission denied, if you ever see it and you're sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, type in sudo. If you're not sure you're supposed to be doing it, maybe you should check first. But if you know that you need to do what you're trying to do, go ahead and type sudo, and it will allow you to do what you need to do. All right, so I did sudo user add stream user. So check this out. One thing I could do is I could do su. I actually don't know. Okay, su minus stream user. I'm gonna explain to you in a second, but There's no password for this person. So until I set a password for stream user, I don't think I can switch straight to stream user from this user. Oh, switch user. That makes sense. Maybe I didn't know that. I think I knew that. I definitely knew that. Man. Yeah, maybe I think I knew that. Maybe. Sometimes I give myself too much credit. Sudo su stream user. It probably does. Stream user probably doesn't have a shell, so it's probably not going to work. Oh, it did work. So su is the command to switch your user. And so to do it, because I don't know the password, because there's no password set, I needed to use sudo to kind of escalate my privileges. To be able to do that, it gives me some warnings because there's I didn't actually set up this user in a good way. Like I didn't give it all the stuff that it needed. But I was able to switch to this person, but it doesn't have a home directory. So where am I? So I'm still in A. Brooks's documents. By default, usually on Linux, if you have things set up properly, when you create a new user, it'll create them a new folder in home. So home is where all the stuff lies. And then it'll usually create a new user for each, it'll create a new folder for each user in here. So there will be /home/stream user, and all of those files and things will be separated off there. To get back to where I was, I can hit Control D, or I could have done a su dash A Brooks there as well. But check this out. Oh no, that wasn't good. Oh, I didn't give the user a login. Oh darn it, that didn't work how I thought it was going to work. I didn't give the user a login, but adding a user like that, if I give it the right. If I give it the right options, it will show up as a login option here on this screen. It'll show up as an option here, and I can make it do that, but I don't think that's important right now. We'll make a user for this screen before we end. All right, close this. And do not disturb back on. All right, so we created a user, and now we can see cat. Cat stands. I'm pretty sure cat is short for concatenate. Cat. Yeah. So concatenate. Concatenate is the process of adding two strings together end to end. But basically, cat allows you to spit the contents of a file out to the command line. And so spitting it out to the command line is something that you might have to do often. So instead of having to go in and edit a file, or to see what's inside of it, you can spit out its contents to the command line. So let's say I was in this SBA gov directory here, and let's say I was in one of these files in here. There's a lot of stuff here. Let's say I wanted to see what was inside this README file. I could look at it, so I could use something like Vim to look at it, and I can go in and I can take a look at what's going on in here. But a faster way, if I just want to quickly see what's in here, I can do cat readme, and it spits out the contents of that file right here, and I can read it here. So remember, I said everything in Linux is a file or a folder. Remember I told you about that etc password file. I can do a cat /etc password, and you can see here the last line I have in here is this stream user. So this is the one that I added. I added a stream user, and it is shown here as a user. Excellent. That's great. Pretty simple. Managing users is something you may have, nowadays you probably won't have to do it quite as much in the same way. So you used to have to, let's say a new developer was on your team, and you needed to set up a profile for them. You would, set up, you would user add and set up your user, and then you can set a password for them. So what is it? Passwd stream user. I think I can do this. Stream user sudo, and I can give this. See how it says new password? I can give stream user a password. So I'm gonna give it password 1. password1. And so you may have to administer users like this, and that may be part of your job. And there's still plenty of jobs where you have to do something like this to manage the users on a system. And then, so if I ever needed to log in as stream user, now I don't even have to sudo, I don't think, because I know the stream user's password, and I type in password1 and it switches me over to this user. Very simple. So actually, I didn't even mean to do that. I just did it out of habit. You can see, man, I don't even know what the W is. Shows who's logged in. Yeah, okay. So you can see who's logged into machine. So a bunch of people can log into the same machine at once. And I typed in W just out of habit because I know that shows me who's logged in. And you can see here that A Brooks is still logged in because I am logged in. That's who's running the computer. But yeah, you can do that. Little extra thing here. But I did show you that passwd is how you set the password for a user. So if you ever needed to change your own password or the password for a different user, you can use passwd. If I were to hit enter now, I could change my own password. There's also more file. Oh yeah, more or less. We'll talk about less and more soon. Concatenates, yeah. So concat, cat spits out to standard output. We will not learn about standard out until next time. Like the difference between standard out and standard, like all that stuff. We'll learn about that next time. We can use cat in a second. Sudo exclamation point. We'll do the last command as root. That is true. So you don't have to hit up and then go to the beginning of a line to add sudo. Correct. That is true. It's funny because I know about the sudo exclamation. I have so many years of not doing that. Like for some reason, that's like there's like a few commands I have a lot of trouble like mentally like remembering to add to my repertoire. Wow, getting the virtual machine to work is a hassle. It is. Getting the virtual machine to work can be a hassle depending on your computer setup. My computer was already set up to make things work, but yes, it can be absolutely a hassle to get the virtual machine set up for the first time. But it's okay. It's a learning experience. I promise you, Google all of your issues. The process of getting it working will feel pretty good. Who uses sed anymore? I do. I use sed every now and then. Why do you need to do sudo for different things? So it's just, again, it's just like Windows or Mac, certain things that require changes to either system files or to kind of protected things need sudo. So yeah, I mean, some things just like are more important than others, like creating a user and changing someone's password and things like that require a little more security. So they ask for the password. Again, it's just like any other application that needs to make changes to the underlying operating system or system files, or does something that is perceived to be something that's secure. You may have to escalate your privileges for that. You should be able to hit bang YouTube to get that. All right. Now groups, we learned about users, but groups. So when we did this ls here, this is the user, this is the group. And so groups, again, groups are just a way to manage, an easy way to manage the permissions of multiple users and what multiple users can do at once without having to, give each individual user a certain permission. So let's say I had a new developer join my team, and maybe they needed access to a suite of directories and files to be able to do their work. Instead of giving this individual person access to all of that, we can add them to a group, some kind of developer group that already has access to everything that they need. So groups, how do you add a group? So I think it's group add. I haven't had to do this. Like, manual Linux administration is not really what I do today anymore. So I think I'm gonna have to look up some of this stuff. But group add, let's say developer. So we're gonna add. So remember, whenever you see permission denied. Oh, actually, let me do what you said. It is sudo bang Thank you. So sudo bang bang will just allow me to run the last thing that was in my history. So your Linux actually keeps a running list of the commands that you've run, and you can actually rerun a command by doing, like, if I want to rerun ll, I could do bang 2000 and it'll redo an ll. It's very, very interesting. So history is a way you can see what you've already done. If you ever forget what you've run, you can do that. But we did a group add. So now if I do cat etc groups, etc group, not groups, I can see here that I have a developer group right here. So when you create a user, it also creates a group for you of that same name. That's why you saw A Brooks twice for those files and folders, that both the user and the group owned it. But I added this developer group here, right here. But there's no user in it currently. And it'll let you know, like, it'll display what users are in that group. So you can see here, A Brooks is in the Docker group up here. So how do we add a user to a group? Let's see. I think it's user mod. So modify user. So user mod dash A for append, G for group, like append to group, I think. And then I think it's user, which is A Brooks, and group to developer. I spelled that way wrong. Devel. Oh wow! How did I? That seems right. Use. Okay, so I got to switch it around. It is A Brooks. This keyboard is gonna. I can't wait to get used to it. Wait. Control C. Sudo. Bang bang. I'm learning so much here. I'm learning just like you guys. So, all right. So this is very interesting. Not interesting, but user mod is how you make changes to a user. So you can change a bunch of different things, but there's these flags. Remember we talked about those flags? The way that we basically we had to append a user or add a user to this group. So we said user mod dash A for append or add, G for group, I believe, and we put in the group name here, which is developer, and the name that we wanted added to it. So now if we do if we cat etc group, you can see here now A Brooks is in the developer group. So I could also add the stream user to this group. And if I ran this again, now you can see that both A Brooks and stream user belong to this group. This gets important when we talk about permissions. We're about to talk about permissions. But this allows you to, again, not have to give a bunch of people own their own separate permissions to do things. You can manage a bunch of people by adding them to a group and only worrying about the permissions and the functionality for that group. So I would only worry about what developer has access to, and then everyone else inside of there would also get those, will get that functionality. Any questions about users and group? We went through that really fast. Users and groups are pretty important as well. That was really fast. Again, users and groups is not quite. Permissions is important, and users and groups is important in terms of permissions, but I don't think users and groups nowadays is quite as important, like for you to know how to like really go in and set all this stuff up. Like you can, I think once you learn some of the other stuff, you can very easily, like if I need to add a user or add a group or change their shell or something like that, you can do that. But it's just something that I just don't see people having to do that much anymore. Even if you do have to manage users like this, it's usually done through another application or through some type of LDAP or other management interface than manually like this. Can you do PS1 with the ZSH, or is there a similar thing? Yeah, yeah, your prompt in ZSH is a little bit different, but you can, yes, you can. What does bang bang do again? Oh yeah, so that when I did sudo bang bang, it basically reran the last command that I ran. So in this case, the last command I ran was cat etsy groups, and if I do sudo bang bang, they call them bangs in Linux, that will rerun the last command that I ran, but it'll rerun it with sudo at the front, so it'll escalate those privileges for that. Yeah, Control L will keep your terminal, keep your history, less strokes. Yes, I use Control L most of the time. But I pulled myself out of that habit because it would lock my. Sometimes I would I have fat fingers, and I would hit Control and Windows key kind of at the same time, and I would keep locking my computer. But I've gotten more accurate with my typing, so it's not so bad nowadays. So I could probably go back to it, but it's the curse of the fat fingers for sure. Let's see. ACO's come in handy there. That's true. Definitely true. Can people be added to different groups? Yes. You can be added to. People can be added to as many groups as you'd like. You can add, people to, tons of groups, as many groups as, I don't know if there's a limit on the number of groups you can add anyone to. How do you remove someone from a group? That is a good question. So whenever you see me type man, Google is a great source of information, but there's I wouldn't say there's an easier way, but there's another way to get information about what you're doing. In Linux, the way that you get information about the things that you're doing are man pages. There are things called man pages. They're short for manual. So basically, every command, just about every command, has a man page. And if you do man and then the name of that command, so we did ls. So if I do man ls, it opens up the manual for ls, which will show me how to use it. Now, man pages take time to be able to understand and parse and to know what's going on. Yes, they take time. And so you can see here, -a, whenever we did ls-a, it's for all, and it says do not ignore entries starting with dot. And so we learned that dots are hidden files, and so the -a shows us all those files. So it takes a while. I think it takes a while to get comfortable with the man pages, with manual pages, to find out what you need to do. I actually don't know how to delete a user from a group offhand, so let's go with man user mod. And let's see what we can find. So the -a was for append. Add the user to the supplementary groups. Use only with the -g option. So maybe there's something else. If there's something for append, maybe there's something else for remove. So I'm just looking through and I'm parsing with my eyes very quickly what it might be. And I don't see anything offhand. Delete sub G. So what I would do in this case is I would simply Google it. I'm sure many of you know. So userdel actually deletes the user, I believe. I don't think it deletes it from the group, but maybe you can just specify group, possibly. I don't know. These are good questions. User, how Linux remove user from group. It's so weird in that this is the stuff that I used to do every day. This was my job. And then I haven't done any of this in years because it's it's a thing, but it's not a thing. G password. That's interesting. All right. Let me see if there are other options. That seems, oh, okay. Okay, so it is delete user. It's del user. Okay. Group mod, you may be able to do it with group mod as well. So the same way you have user mod, which modifies the user, group mod allows you to modify the group. It's possible that there's a group mod option. It looks like you can do it with user delete or del user. which is that the same thing as user del? See, there's all these commands. That's why I say it's not important to remember all of them. Let's see, man user del, and then delete user account related files, man del user, and the two different commands. And del user is it, or del group, remove a user, or oh no, same thing. Never mind. But it looks like if I use del user with the user and the group, I hope it'll only remove the user, but let's find out. Let's mess around. User del. Actually, which one did they say? They said use all secondary supplement. Interesting. Man, see, there's so many different ways to do stuff. It looks like you can do a user mod again without the dash A, and it'll remove everyone from all their groups. Maybe it's dash R. That's for Suze. All right, let's go with the first one we saw. Del user, user group. So del user. The user was stream user, and the group was developers. Was it developer or developers? Developer. All right, and so we once again can use this, and so user del, or was it del user, will work on Debian. It looks like there's a couple different ways. Yeah, actually, I don't remember this at all. Like, I don't think I've ever used del user because I'm used to managing enterprise systems on Red Hat and CentOS-based things. So it's very interesting. It's very interesting how these simple things you forget about. Let's see. Angry Mohawk, I bet we could do it with group mod. Let's see, man group mod. New name. Maybe we cannot. Okay. So del user is how we would do that. Group mod is the way. Is it? Just throw it out. Here's a command line calendar that can integrate with Google Calendar. Oh, that's cool. Cow curse. I'll check that out too. All right. Now the hard. So this stuff is like using groups is great, but again, not the only reason. Using groups is important to know, but I'm for 90% of you, permissions. The only reason you're going to be super pressed over users and groups is because of permissions. This is something that you will always face when dealing with Linux. We won't necessarily be setting up users and setting up groups, but you will absolutely be dealing with permissions and file permissions. This is the hardest thing to learn out of everything tonight. This might be the hardest thing to learn in the entirety of the 3-part Linux piece. Not because it's difficult to learn, but it's because it requires some amount of memorization, and it requires some amount of very basic addition. But it can be really frustrating. It can be really frustrating. I've seen people really struggle with this, and I hope that it won't be so bad for you. All right, let's get to a directory that has less stuff in it. Let's go into our documents. Let's go into mastermind. Let's stay here for a second, and then we're going to create our own folder and we're going to do some stuff in there. So Linux permissions, who has access, what user, what group has access to any files or folders at a given time. And the way that you know that is, first off, you have to do, the only way to see it from the command line is to do this ls-l, not only way to see it, but the easiest, quickest way to see it is this ls-l command. And this first column over here is Linux permissions. And maybe you can already see why that would be, it's going to be a little complicated. It's a fairly simple, it's a simple concept that takes a little while to master. But you can see here, let's break it down. I want you to ignore the very first item here. So all this is, everywhere you see the D, everywhere you see AD, it's a directory. So D just stands for directory in all those cases. Everywhere else, it's not a directory. It's just it's a quick way for you to see those things. There's some other things that go with that. Ignore that first line. When you think of permissions, I want you to know about this. There are three, I think they're called octets, I believe. So I'll paste something in here. So there are nine items here. There are three sets of three. There are three, it repeats 3 times. And so what you can see is maybe for something that has all of them, so maybe something like this actually is maybe what I would rather paste. You get RWX, RWX, RWX. So what does that mean? In Linux, there are 3 main file permissions. There's read. There's read, which means the user or the group can read this file. There's a W, which means the user or group who owns this can write to the file. And the X means that the user or the group that owns this file can execute this file. So any file that is an executable that needs a script or an executable that needs to be kicked off has to have those privileges. So R stands for read, W stands for write, X stands for executable. Should put moderator. Yes. So just put it in there in all caps. That's funny. But you can see that happens 3 times. So I said there's 3 main ones. Why is it in there 3 different times? So the first 3 are the permissions for the user. Who is the user? How do you know who the user is? So this person has read, write, and execute. So they can do all those 3 things, but who's the user? Remember I said the first name you see here is user. So the user is A. Brooks. So I can read, I can write, and I can execute on that file. The second three octets are for the group. So first 3, rewrite, execute for the user, rewrite, execute for the group. So anyone that's in the A. Brooks group, or if the group for this was actually developers instead. I think my headphones are about to die. Let me plug them in. They're supposed to be wireless. Give me 1 second. All right, we're back. That should ensure we make it through the end. But yeah, the second 3 are for the group. So that means anyone that was in this group, whether it be the developer group or whoever, can have, like, these are their permissions. And then the last 3 are for everyone else in the world, everyone who's not a part of the group, everyone who's not the user. These are their permissions. And so it's a weird way. I don't call it weird, but it's a simple way, but it's a way to describe in one little quick line who can do what with a file. And you can, like, I can look at any of these because I've seen it so many times and tell exactly, who can do what with what whenever. So things like this one, look at this, this key here. This is a key that is used to log into servers. I can see here that someone can read it, the user can read it, but nothing else. The user can't do anything else. No one else can do anything else. These lines mean that there's no permissions there. So it means that only the user can read this file and no one else can do anything with this. So I am the only person, me and the root user are the only people who can read this file. But we can't execute it. We can't change the file either. We couldn't even edit it if we want to. Again, the root user could, but I wouldn't be able to edit this file. And so for this one, it means that me, the user, can read this file and I can write to this file, but I cannot execute it. The group, anyone in the A. Brooks group can read it and also write it, but not execute it. But everyone else in the world, anyone can read it. Anyone can read it because it has the R here, but no one can write to it or execute from it. So we'll stick that there first. We'll throw that out. Does anyone have any questions about that? I'm going to get you into the numbers of it. Yeah, I said there was going to be some addition here, but I want you to understand that piece first. The first 3 is for the user, which you can find here. The second 3 are for the group, which you can find here. And the last 3 are the permissions for anyone else, for everyone else. Yes, does anyone have any questions about that? So after you're done with this, can you please comment what's your favorite way, what the best practices is to control environment variables, like editing bash RC or profile? Yes, I put everything, I do all of my stuff in bash RC. That's out of habit, because when I started using Linux, bash profile generally wasn't a thing on all the distributions I was using. I know like Mac likes to use a dot profile and stuff. So I pretty much put everything in bash RC. Depending on how your environment is set up, they all kind of just call each other and source each other. So it generally doesn't matter. But I use dot files for everything. So I will comment on that a little bit later. Notice directories are executable. That is very interesting. We'll talk about that in a second. Bonus command, stat. Yes, I like stat commands. I'll type that in a second. Stat %C. So I actually thought I had stat available in here. Interesting. I thought it was available. I thought I set it up. But I'm gonna set that up because it is a good bonus command. Also, most of the time, your terminal color executables file differently. Yes, so you can see here everything that has an X on here, everything that's executable, specifically executable to the world. Well, even my user or whatever user you're logged in as, will usually turn up green. We usually turn up green. So you can see this is just a image file, a .png. But so you can't execute that, but it has execute permissions. It turns green. So usually when you have execute permissions, the terminal will change the color of it so that your eyes can visually see what is executable and what's not. And why do some have separating? Let me see. What do you mean separate? So it's not separating. Those are empty. Those are empty spaces. So if like write for this one, write's not active. So it's a dash. A dash indicates that permission is not something that this user or this group has. Yeah. So if it's not available, like if that's a permission that's not set, the dash is there in place of it. Separate alias file, just to keep things cleaner. Yes, I do like to keep a separate alias file. I used to, but now I no longer do that. Just because I don't have as many modifications or customizations to my system as I used to. So I just put the few that I have in my bash RC. Well, octet set to off even, man. What does octet set to off even mean? Oh, sorry. Okay, great question. Yes. So you're about to see me shut these on and off. That's a bad way to say it. It's giving permissions or removing permissions. So whenever you see the dash, that means it's off. Essentially, it means it's off. Or those permissions aren't active. Or the user of the group doesn't have those permissions. When you can see the letter, it means it is on or it has those things. But I think you're about to see that real time and it'll make a little more sense when we get there. Isn't a separator? Yes, it's not a separator. Yeah, I use Vim and Nerdtree to create new files and directories all the time. I have no idea what you're spamming. You're probably not spamming. I never changed the Nightbot stuff, but I'll make it a little bit less crazy. All right. All right, so let's talk numbers. This will make a little more sense so you can see stuff shut on and off. Or I hate saying that, but that's the best way to describe it to me right now. I'm gonna make a directory called permissions, and I'm gonna go into that file, under that directory. All right, so let's make 2 files. File1.txt and file2.txt. So I have 2 files here. Whoa. All right. So now I have the, I didn't mean to make, that was dumb. Never run this command. Don't run arm-rf star anywhere. Like, don't do that. Don't follow my lead. File one. I should have just moved them. Can I do that? I don't know. TXT and touch file. All right, so I've got these two files here. And by default, let's look at the permissions that it was given, or that would have gave me. So file one, the user is A Brooks, the group is A Brooks. All right, so I own it, my user owns it, my user's group owns it as well. But look at the permissions. I've got RW blank. So I have read, so A Brooks has read permission, so I can read the file. I have W permission, so I can write to the file. So write means you can edit it and you can save it. And then I don't have execute. So we know the third one is execute. So if this was an executable, I wouldn't be able to kick it off. Like I wouldn't be able to run this application or this program. The second three is for the group. So the group is A Brooks. So the A Brooks group can read the file. It can write the file. So it can change it and save it, but it also cannot execute. Now the rest of the world, everyone else can read it. They can read file one, but they cannot write to it. They cannot execute it. All right, so let's do one thing first in terms of file permissions. Let's change the group. Let's change who owns this file. So, let's, the way you change who owns a file is you do chown, which is change owner. And so you can do it like this. The first name that you put will be the user. So the user, I'm going to keep the user as A Brooks. I'm going to keep the user as A Brooks for now. And then you separate it with a colon, and then you give it a group. So right now the group is A Brooks, but I want it to be developer. I want the developer group to now own this file. So if I had chown, whoops, I didn't tell it what file. So I said chown A Brooks developer, so the owner, the group, but I have to tell it which file to change the ownership for. And we're gonna do file1.txt. So that's how you change who owns this. So if I wanted it to be stream user, I could change the user to stream user and keep this as developer, but the name of the file, and now that changes who owns this file. So we hit this, operation not permitted. So let's escalate our privileges and type in my password. All right, so take a look at it now. A Brooks owns it because, again, up here on the chown command, that's who I put first. Then I changed it to developer group. So now the developer group is who has access to this file. This is the group that now owns this file. So anyone in this developer group now has these permissions. Remember, the second octet, the second three is for the group. So anything that's set here, anyone who's in the developer group now has these permissions. So they can now read it and they can write to it, but they cannot execute it. All right, so that's the first piece of it. So you can change who owns it, who doesn't. So if I actually went back up to Chmod and I went back and I changed this to, I changed this to stream user. Darn it. I really like the sudo ... thing, bang bang thing. This is good. And so if I do this again, now the stream user owns it and developer. So now actually I can't even read this file. Like if I tried to cat file1.txt, well, there's nothing in it, but it probably, well, I'm part of the developer group. Never mind. Never mind. But if I wasn't a part of the developer group, and I tried to read this file, it would say that I couldn't read this file because I wouldn't have those permissions. But let's go ahead and change that back to, let's go ahead and change that back to A Brooks. All right, so that's the chown command is how you change the owners of the file. It's how you change the user and the group that owns the file. Chown, change owner. We'll stop there for a second. That's the first piece of permissions. That's the first piece. Well, second piece really. The first piece is read, write, execute, read, write, execute, read, write, execute. The first three for the user. second 3 for the group, the last 3 for the rest of the world, and that this is the owner, this is the group that owns it, and you can change those things with chown. We'll stop there for a second. Let's see. How secure would a file be set to only root user read versus maybe using an encryption on it that's seeable by everyone? So that's an interesting question. That's an interesting question. Secure would a file be set to only root user read? Yeah, on a lot of systems, there's something called the wheel user. There's like when you see me type sudo, I'm set up in the system explicitly to be able to escalate my privileges. Having something being only readable by the root user is relatively easy to get around. I mean, I don't know. I like probably sure if I can read something, if I'm able to read a file that I can't decrypt, that file's useless to me. Encryption's probably better on that front. Yeah, encryption's probably better on that front, to be honest. There are a lot of ways to gain escalated privileged access to a system. Are we going to cover UMask? It can be confusing. We're not covering UMask tonight. We are covering UMask on Wednesday or Tuesday, Sunday. Tuesday, we're going to cover UMask. It can be very confusing. We're not covering UMask tonight. Where is the addition part of this? Here comes the addition part of this. So these can be changed. These are referenced, and you'll start thinking about them this way. These are referenced here by numbers, actually. So 3 octets represent 3 different numbers. And so what are those values? How do those values work? So an R, a read, is worth 4. So maybe I'll, all right. So a read is worth 4. Read is worth 4. I'm going to put this in the chat. R equals 4. A write is worth 2. And an execute is worth 1. All right, so you got those in there. You can copy that down somewhere. An R is worth 4. A W is worth 2. An X is worth 1. So if you had all 3, if you added them all together, the biggest number you can get is 7. 4 plus 2 is 6. Plus 1 is 7. So if you have a read, a write, and an execute, this first octet, the value of it is 7. The second octet, if it's all filled in, is 7. Now take a look at this. R space, there's no W, but there's an X. So we know R is worth 4. And then we know that an X is 1. So that is a 5. So we got a 4 plus 1, we got 5. So this one is 7, 7, 5. And so those numbers can be used to set these very quickly. So you don't have to set each individual permission. And so the numbers, like you start to match the numbers to what their permissions are. Because again, there's only, like, if the number is a 6, it can only be these 2, and it'll give you read and write. If it's 7, it's all 3. You know that if it's only a 3, that it's only the write and the execute, which you'll very rarely see, to be honest. But if there's a 5, there's a write and execute, but no, there's a read and an execute, but no write. So you add those together. Let's say I wanted to give my user access to read, write, and execute on this file. So the way that you change these permissions is chmod. So we did chown, which was change owner, and now we have chmod. This is how you modify the permissions on a file. So now you can use these numbers. So let's say I want A. Brooks to be able to do everything with this file. So I'll give it a 7. Let's say I want people in the developer group, I want them to be able to read it, but that's it. So if we want someone to just be able to read it, what do we give it? So we know R is worth 4. So we're gonna start with 4 because we know we want them to be able to read it. Do we want them to write it? No, we only want them to read it. So we're not going to add anything. And do we want them to execute it? No, we only want them to be able to read it, which is the value of 4. And let's say for everyone else in the world, every single other person, we don't want them to be able to do anything with this file. We only want the user and the group to be able to do stuff with it, no one else. So if we don't want anyone else to be able to do anything, we give it a 0. A 0 doesn't give it any permissions. And then we say the name of the file, and we hit enter. And if we look at it again, look how they changed. So look up here is what they were before. We passed in 3 numbers, and now look, 7. So rewrite and execute for the user. The next 3, we just said that we only wanted them to be able to read. So we give it a 4. And then the last one's a 0. So it didn't give them any permissions. The rest of the world has no permissions. So again, this part, like I said, this part takes a while to truly understand. But where do these numbers come from? So the numbers I believe are relatively arbitrary, but there are 3 numbers that allow only one value. No matter what the combination is, a single value describes exactly what's going on. So again, there's no confusion on what's going on. Assigning 4, this is the lowest number set that you could use. So that you could have different combinations that describe exactly what's going on. They describe up to, the 0 state, the full state, minus R, minus W, minus X, just X, just R, just W. So I think there's only 8 cases. So basically 3 numbers allow for around 8 cases to be true. So yeah, the numbers are relatively arbitrary. If you always have a user group the same, like A Brooks, will the perms be identical for the first 2 sets? They could be. They could be. But it wouldn't really matter. So your user permissions will override the permissions of this group. So it'll use these, like if it said A Brooks on both of these, if A Brooks can, even if I did like for the file 2. So if I did chmod 700 file 2.txt, my user permissions will override these group permissions, users first. So it would allow me to do everything, even though my group has no access to do anything. So if I tried to like vim file 2.txt and I try to type in some stuff and I try to save it, it will allow me to save it because these will override them. If you think RWX as binary switches, yes, that's a good one. 0 for off and 1 for on, then 001. Yeah, there we go. That's it. Auto exec. I really like that. That makes sense. Yeah, so the numbers don't actually matter. I'm sure there are actually another set of numbers that we could use. But again, these are the lowest ones. And yes, if you think about it like binary, then absolutely this works really well for that. Yes, so again, that part gets complicated. Again, remember the highest number you can have in any slot is 7. And remember, rewrite, execute in that order. RWX, rewrite, execute. Say it a million times because that's the order. That's the order that you're gonna have to remember. 4, 2, 1. 4, 2, run. Read, write, execute. Read, write, execute. 4, 2, 1. Remember those orders, and then you could do it. Can you give permissions for a whole directory? Yeah, absolutely. So you can give permissions to a directory the same way you give permissions to a file. So if I mkdir directory 1, I still have permissions here, and I give no one permissions to this directory. So chmod 000 directory 1, take a look at it. No one has any permissions, even though the D's here to like, don't make internet jokes. The D's here to let you know that it's a directory. Like no one can do anything with it now. So now, what happens if I try to like move that, like rename that directory? If I try to move directory 1 to directory 2, Didn't think it would allow me to do that. But what happens if I try to delete it? Why is it letting me do this? Huh. I didn't expect that. Actually, let's see. I thought this was going to make it untouchable. I wonder if this is a new Linux thing. Let me see here. Does this work with files as well? No way this works with files as well. Chmod 000 file 1.txt. Is it because I'm the owner? What if I try to like, obviously I can't vim it. Okay, no perm. So it lets me know actually in Vim right here that I can't do anything with this. I can't do it. Let me see if I try to save it. What? I'm confused. Let me know. I'm actually really confused. This must be, I still have WRX. No, I don't. I have no permissions on this. Why? Oh, I have 0 permissions on this, and I was able to edit. Maybe this is like a new. Maybe it's like a new Linux thing. But I've 100% in my career had files be set to 000, and I mean you can delete them as root. You can remove them as root user. Like you can do pretty much anything as root user, but the user not be able to do anything with that file. Just a file sitting there that they can't touch. Like they own it, but they can't do anything with it. It does let me edit it. I can override everything. I guess maybe the exclamation point takes on sudo. Oh, no, I can't. It says I save it, but I can't save it. You're right. So if I type in it, it says I can override it with an exclamation point, and then it says it's written. But if I exit and I cat, I can see that. So that makes sense. That's what I expect to see there. But it let me write. That's weird. You shouldn't be able to even execute it though, right? I think it's because you're the owner. Yeah. This is probably a nice update. I actually bet if I did this in like CentOS or something that it would not work. It's very interesting. I fully expected me to not have access to this file. All right, no biggie. But you don't ever do this. Don't ever set a file to 000. It's probably wrong. It's probably not what you want. But what the good thing to know here is this is the user that owns it. This is the group that you have read, write, and execute parameters for the user, rewrite and execute for the group, rewrite and execute for everyone else who is not in the user group. And that's how you set them. So chown is how you change the owner. Chmod is how you change the permissions. Yeah, it's also something that's super weird. It's like bothering me, but all good. If it makes people's lives easier, I'm down for it. But that's Linux permissions. Again, remember those numbers. Remember the numbers 421. Even if you got to reference it again, know that those each of the rewrite and execute, know that they mean a value, or they map to a value, and you can go ahead and look that up if you ever need to set it. And the last thing is text manipulation. So we learned a lot already. The last thing we're going to do is text manipulation. So there's a lot of things. This is what we're going to learn about touch. And you already saw us do touch. So we touched an empty file, a completely empty file. We'll just do file3.txt. Again, creates an empty file for us. And now if we look, we've got an empty file available to us. But how do we manipulate text from the command line? Like we don't have access to VS Code. We don't have access to Microsoft Word or anything like that. How do we manipulate text? So one of the things I was going to teach in this part was cat. Not that you need it right now, but cat is one way that you can get text out to standard out. So this is standard output. Everything that's everything that you see come out on the screen in the terminal is standard output. So we know that we have, actually, let's do this really quick. Sudo. Actually, let's start with this first. Let's, by default, you'll see, so the text editor you're gonna have on any system, no matter what, any Linux system, no matter how old the server is, no matter what it is, the text editor you're gonna have on there is something called VI. So you see me use Vim. I told you it's difficult to learn. The learning curve is pretty high, but VI is what will be available. Any server, any system you get on, VI will be included. That is why so many systems administrators, so many people who manage systems learn it and get good with it, because again, it's always going to be available. So if you log into a system, you need to be able to edit files, and VI is there for you. But another one that's easier to use that you'll probably get in your Linux distro, and I don't even know if I have it on here, is something called Nano. So there's a few text editors that you have available to you. There's Nano, there's Pico, there's Emacs, etc. But Nano is something that you might have available to you. It's much easier to use than Vim. You just get into it. There's no modes. I can just type in, hello, my name is Aaron. And then I can save it. So it tells you what to do down here at the bottom. It tells you what you can type. So if you need to do simple text editing, if you need to easily manipulate text right on a system, right on a server, and all you have available to you is the command line, this is like the faster way anyway, you can use it. So all of these things down here to tell you what to do. The caret right here is for control. So whenever you see a caret, that stands for holding down control. And so to exit, I will hit Control X. And so if I want to save it, actually I don't even know what write out is, but to get out, I just do Control X. It says, hey, you made some changes. Do you want to save it? Just go ahead, hit Y to save it. I need a name to write. It's already a file. This isn't a new file. This is an old file. So I can just hit enter here. Oh, maybe I can't. Is this not a new file? What did I do? Hold on. Oh, maybe not. Maybe I just typed Nano. So yes, you can type in Nano. I could have named that file whatever I wanted. So I can type this in. If I want to exit, I want to save it. Whoops. I can call it fun.txt and hit enter. And now I've created a brand new file in Nano. But let's say I wanted to edit file 3. I can do Nano file 3.txt, and now I can edit file 3, and I can save it. So Control X, Y to save it, hit enter to keep the file name. And now if I cat file 3, you can see here that the stuff that I typed is now saved in there. So Nano, like I said, Nano won't always be available to you, but it's definitely a great place to start. I see Bukatek, that you're gonna start using Nano. I would definitely, Nano's a good entry to editing files, from the command line. But again, it won't always be available, but you can install it. But you'll learn that in the next class, how to install packages. Nano is fine for quick edits, but if you teach yourself 6 main hotkeys in Vim, you can pretty much do anything you want. Yes, Vim is superior. I used to be on the Nano train, but like when I first started, I was like, why would I ever use Vim? Nano's great. It's not. It's fine for quick edits. It does what you want it to do, but yeah, Vim is much better. Honestly, other than regex, I can't find a reason to use Vim over Nano. Then you're not editing large enough or complex enough files. Speed of editing. Like I promise you that any file that we needed to make changes to, that either of us needed to make changes to, if it was given to us at the same time, I would beat you by double your time, if not more, just from the speed at which you can navigate, the speed at which you can move around, and Vim is. I felt that way. I felt that way until you learn this. It's one of those things like you don't really know what you're missing until you kind of get into it. But Nano's definitely good at a pinch. Yeah, the benefit of learning Vim is that it'll always be there. Can block comment like in Vim? I don't know if you can block comment in Nano, but You can do it in Vim. All right. So that was one piece of editing, so text manipulation, but there are also other ways to edit text. There are also other ways to manipulate text and to do some other things. So we talked about Vim a little bit. We did a little bit of Vim, so I could do that in the same way. So I could Vim file3.txt and I could modify it here. Sure. But I can also do things like this. I'm gonna manipulating text. I could do, let's say I wanted to empty out a file. Let's say I wanted to get rid of everything that's in file 3. So we know file 3 has a bunch of random letters in it. Check this out. I'll tell you what that did in a second. But when I do cat file 3, nothing comes out. So what this did is this is I think they call these redirect operators. I believe they're generally supposed to come after commands, but you can also do it after nothing. So basically what this did is this stuck everything that's on the left, or the output of what's on the left, it stuck that output into the file that's right here. So not only did it stick it in there, but it overwrote everything. So basically took everything that was over here on the left and threw it into this file. So there's nothing else in this file. So if we vim file3.txt again, it's completely empty. Now you got to be careful with that because you can see it didn't ask me, am I sure I want to do this? But it's a way that you can do that. So the same way that we used nothing on the left, we could also use something. So I could say, hello, my name is Aaron, and I could still send that into file3.txt. Whoops. Oh, do I not, does that not work? Oh, I have to echo it. Sorry. I'll teach you about echo now. I actually don't know why I typed this in. I knew I couldn't do this. But there's a command called echo. All echo does is it echoes what you put there. So generally people use echo to see what the value of environment variables are, like I did with shell, but echo will simply send whatever you send after it. So things like hello, it'll send it to standard output. Remember, standard output is this. Think about this like format.println when we were learning Go, or print in Python. It'll print this out. This is how you display output, is echo. So basically what's happening in this command here that we did is we sent this to standard out. So before, if I just do echo hello, my name is Aaron, it'll print that out. It'll print that down here. But you can see when we ran it up here, it did not print it out. And that's because this is a redirect operator, and so it sent it, instead of printing it out, it says, hey, don't go to standard output, go to the file that I sent you to. This is great because you'll use this for things like logging. So maybe you're running a big command that's going to have a lot of output. If you want to save that, you can use something like this to send that text to a file so that you can save it, which is really, really cool. So now if we look in, file3.txt, you can see hello, my name is Aaron got slapped into there. I can also take the output of one file and put it into another. So if I do echo file1, actually it's not going to work because of the permissions, but we can try to send that into file3. And let's take a look at file3. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. I meant to cat. So this is pretty interesting. So the contents of file 3 is file1.txt, and that's simply because I echoed file1.txt. To be able to do what's in file 1, I would have had to do cat. And basically, again, cat file1 will send, let's do this. It'll send it to standard output, mod 755 file 1. This will give me access to do that. All right, so this is what's in file 1. And now I'm gonna send that into file 3. Take a look at file 3. All right, now look how every other time we were running it before, it overwrote what was in there, basically cleared it out and put something new in there. This time it left this in here and then it added this. Why did it do that? It did that because I used a new redirect operator. So before I was using one arrow. So one arrow basically overwrites everything and just sticks everything in. And two arrows appends it. So append says, hey, don't delete anything, just tack this onto the end of whatever's in that file. So if you want to make sure you save what is in your file and not overwrite things, you want to do append. But if not, you can go ahead and do one. And again, these are called redirect operators, and this is a way for you to be able to manipulate text. So you can actually use this. You can actually use this to write files. So if you don't know how to use Nano, or Nano's not available, and you have no idea how to use Vim, you can actually do echo and then write everything you want. So you can say echo. Maybe your file is supposed to say, maybe it's a configuration file, and you're supposed to say like num cores equals 8, and your next line is supposed to be I don't know, memory equals 512 megabytes. And you could take all this and you could pump it into file 3. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. I meant to close the, that's not gonna work. That's gonna put everything in there now. I should have closed the quotes. Whoops. Actually, now I want to see what's in there. Cool. Let's run that again. All right. So now if I run file 3, I should be able to see those new things that I added. So if this is a configuration file, I wouldn't have actually had to go in and edit it. I can send in, I can echo the standard out, and I can send that information into a file. And so I could edit a configuration file like this, or I could, modify a file like this. I wouldn't recommend it. But in a pinch, you can do that. There are going to be times when you have to do something like this. So that's one way. How else can we manipulate text? So there's things like sed that we're not going to do right now. Maybe this is not part of text manipulation, but it is a part of messing with text. Let's say I had a bunch of files here. Imagine there were 40 other files in this directory, and I knew I needed to go change some configuration, but I didn't know where to find it. There's a command called grep, which does a string search. We learned about strings when we learned about the different data types of strings. Think words and phrases, list of characters. So if I do a string search, so if I grep, what did I call this? Num. If I know there's like a number of cores, or I know there's memory. I know there's memory in one of these files, and I tell it what files to look for. So I could just go star, or I could go, if I know it's in a text file, I could go star.txt. This says, hey, search for memory in all of the text files that are in this directory. If I look for it, it finds memory, so it tells me which file it was. It's in file3.txt, and it shows me the line that it found it on. Maybe that's valuable now. Grep is a great command that you'll need. And again, let's take a look at man grep. What it is, print lines that match patterns. So you just want to match a pattern. Again, this is a string search. And so it'll find whatever pattern you're looking for. Yeah, I wish we've already been on too long. But that's a lot for tonight. I don't think there's much more to editing text. Again, you have Nano available to you. You have Vim. You have these redirect operators that you can push standard out into a file. You learn how to create a file with touch. And that's probably everything. We did mkdir. We did a few make directories. Why does it say file.txt are directories? It does not say that. Where do you see that at? I'm not sure where you see that at. Let's see. I've used Linux for probably close to 22 years, and V on Unix. Don't discount Nano. I'm not discounting Nano. Vim is better. It's better. Like it is. I could see if it was like heavier and it took longer to get into or something, like longer to open up or something, but it doesn't. I actually don't see any. I don't see where I don't know where any nano benefits are. I don't know where any nano benefits are minus learning curve. So once you conquer the learning curve, I don't see any reason why Vim wouldn't be superior, but I don't know. To make an empty file, do touch file name. We did that. Any quick ways of distinguishing a directory from a file? Yes. So the ls-l command will give you, you can tell by this over here, the directories will have a D here. So that's one way. So I'm glad someone taught me this. Type LL. The F thing here actually shows. So if we look at man ls, it appends like a type on here. So it classifies. So append indicator. So for mine, so if you do an ls-f, what it'll do is it will, if it's a directory, it will append a slash, or if it's another file, it'll append the type. So let's go back to my like home directory. When I do it, so when I do an LL, the quick way to tell the difference is look at the slash on all these. So one, usually it'll be bold. Usually it'll bold it on most computers, even if you don't have it set up this way. Like by default, it usually makes them directories more bold than files. But if you use that -F, if you use ls-F, it will append this slash to the end. And that's the way that I like to see it. So if I do ls-f, you can see here, it'll put the slashes on there. That's the way that I like to do it. Again, on most machines though, if you do an ls, it'll just be it'll just be bold. So actually, let's look at a different. Let me just open up my regular terminal, which is not shouldn't have all the same colors as this. And I do bash, and even with a different color scheme, I know it's small, but if I do an ls, it makes the directories kind of bold and in blue here. Yeah, but the F is my preferred method. I love, my eyes have like grown to catch that really, really quickly. So that's the way I like to do it. Let's see. Or if we do a -L and yeah, the D in the beginning. Can you change the directory to a file? That's a great question. I've never tried to do that. Let's try it. That's never been something I've ever needed to do. So let's make a directory. So this is good because I can also teach you about how to rename things. Let's go back into documents, mastermind. What did I call this? Permissions. All right, so let's see if we can turn a directory into a file. So let's mkdir test dir, and now we have a directory here. We can see there's a D right here. If I do an ls-f, it'll show this on the end. To rename a file or like change a file from what it currently is, there's no rename command. There's a move command. So you can copy things around. So I could copy a file. So if I wanted to copy it, file1.txt, I'd copy it to my new file.txt. And it would take this and it would copy it and give me my new file.txt. Now, to rename something, you just move it. So instead of copying it, you move it. And when you move something, there's no, like, it puts it in a new location, but it moves the old one to the new location, but it doesn't keep a copy around because it wasn't a copy. So if I want to move my new file to like Aaron.txt, I could do that. And now you can see there's no more my new file. There's only Aaron.txt. Now let's see if we can move this from a folder to a file. I don't think it'll work. I think it'll stay a directory, just with a new name. So like, let's call it like testdir.txt. And if we look at it, it's still a directory. I don't think there's any way, not that I know of, maybe somebody knows, I don't think there's any way to do that. And I don't think you would ever want to do that, to be honest. Yeah, I think it's a weird thing to want to do. But yes, I don't think you can do that. All right. Dude, D-Flare, congratulations. Yeah, if you got it installed, I mean, that's amazing. It can be very, very frustrating. It's definitely hard work. I promise you it's valuable to have done that. And I recommend, like now that you've got one distribution installed, go download some other ones. Try CentOS, try a bunch of other ones. See how the setup process is different. You'll run into distros that you can't set up, like that you just don't know what to do with. But I think those things are important to learn, like mess around with them. I think you can have some fun with that. Let's see. We'll walk through installing Vanilla Arch in a few months. Maybe we will. Okay, this was a long one. For everyone who has Google Classroom, there should be some good resources to kind of extend that. We went through a lot of that kind of fast at the end. I think I remember this being mistimed last time as well. I'm sorry it took this long. But hopefully what you got out of today is, and what you should go back to learn, so these things are important, are one, that you can there's a way to virtualize operating systems. You don't necessarily need to set it up, but you know there's a way to do it, and that's how most systems are set up now, like in enterprise space. Systems are virtualized, and you need to have a reasonable understanding of what Linux is. You need to know that a Linux system is no different from really any other system. You can that the command line is the same thing as the GUI. Everything that you can do from the GUI, you can do from the command line. You can actually do more from the command line than you can do with the GUI. And that everything that you're doing in the GUI, which stands for Graphical User Interface, is basically running some types of commands underneath, like in the command prompt or in the terminal underneath. We learned a little bit about command line navigation. We learned how to orient ourselves and know where we are. So we learned that if you could type in PWD, which stands for present working directory, that we know where we are. We learned that if we want to move to a new directory, we use CD, which is change directory, and you do CD and you tell the computer to go where you want to go. So if we want to move into back to home, I don't know what's going on. We also learned that the way you tell those paths that you tell Linux to move to when you're trying to change directories or refer to a file, we learned about absolute pathing versus relative pathing. We learned that absolute pathing is everywhere, is the path to where we want to go from the very start of the system. We learned that the start of the system is always a slash. So that if you see a slash at the beginning, that's the absolute path, and not the relative path. Relative path is how you get to a file or folder or reference it from where you are. So it's the relative location from where you currently are. And you can find that out again by running pwd. We learned about, what else did we learn about after that? We learned a little bit about adding users and groups. So you can add users to the system, but you can also add groups to the system. Groups are important because you can, instead of having to manage permissions for lots of users, you can add them all. You can add a bunch of users to a group and manage permissions on that single group. Then we learned about Linux permissions, which I'm sure everyone who this is their first time hearing it needs to dive deeper into. We learned that you can see Linux permissions by typing ls-l to get a long listing, and it'll show it to you here. We learned that there are 3 equivalent sets here. So there are 3 levels of read, write, and execute. And again, in that order, remember that order: read, write, execute. And then we learned that the first 3 are for the user, the second 3 are for the group, the third 3 are for everyone else. Then we learned that those that read, write, and execute, they have numbers associated with them. We learned that R's or reads are worth 4. We learned that writes are worth 2, and executes are worth 1. And that'll allow us to specify a number, which will tell us what values go here. So 7 will give us everything. A 4 will just give us a read. So we learned about that. I promise you that'll get easier and easier. I had a really tough time with that the first time I learned about it. Yeah, it'll take a while for your eyes to start catching the stuff and seeing the differences. It'll take a while for you to realize what combinations of numbers mean what. But again, practice. We learned that to change these numbers, or we can use these numbers to change the permissions using the chmod command, the chmod command. We learned that we can change the user in the group, the person who owns it, as well as the group who owns it, using the chown command. We learned that we could, add a user to this group, remove users from the groups. Learned about permissions, and then we learned a little bit about text manipulation. So we learned how to create empty files, create empty directories. We learned how to copy. We just learned how to copy a file with the cp command. The cp is how you copy. And to rename a file or move a file to a new location is the move command. So let's say I wanted to move mastermind permissions. Let's say I wanted to move fun.txt to my documents directory. So I can say move fun.txt. So this is the file I want to move. And instead of just giving it a new name, I can tell it where to go. So I can say /home, abrooks, documents. And now this will move it. I gave it the absolute path. Remember the slash. I gave it the absolute path from the beginning of my file system to the place that I want it to go. So it's going to go all the way to my documents. And if I go there, cd, cd documents, I can see that fun.txt made it here, safe and sound. And then, we learned text manipulation. So we learned about Nano to edit files as a text editor that's easier than VI or Vim. We learned about Vim, which we've learned about before. VI, we know that VI is going to be the editor that's available to you majority of the time on pretty much any system you're ever going to get onto. So that's why it's worth learning, but Nano is an option as well. We also learned about redirect operators. We learned how to do echo, which will echo, it'll repeat basically what we tell it to into standard output. We learned that we can redirect that the information going to standard output into a file, so we can also modify text using that as well. So that's a lot of stuff. That's a whole lot of stuff to have learned in 3 hours. A little over 3 hours. So now what do you do after this? Again, if you have the Google Classroom, go through, read those things, watch those videos, but practice. Like, if you set up your own environment, practice. If you set up your own server on Linode or Linode or whatever it's called, or DigitalOcean, like, mess around, add some users, add some groups, set some passwords, create files, remove files, edit files. Like, just play around. Like, if you break your VM, if you break your virtual machine somehow, cool, install a new one. Like, you got like mess around, play with it. And you'll get better. It definitely takes some work. Like I said, I actually, the first company I ever worked for actually sat me down for 6 months to learn Linux. So I had 6 months of dedicated time to learn Linux, and you're going to try to learn this in a week. So don't be too hard on yourself. We went through a lot. If you're confused after tonight, do not sweat it. Just, again, write down those concepts, write down those things, and see if you can learn a little bit more about them. Ask questions as you need. You will not be great at this overnight, but again, you will start to understand. Like, you'll see me do stuff, you have no idea the commands I'm running, but you will know that, oh, like, all he did a lot there. I saw him, go into Vim, but I know that Vim modifies files, and I saw him change a line. And even though he clicked a bunch of stuff really fast, and I don't know exactly what he changed, I know that that's all he did. I know he just went in and modified a file. Or if you see me in the middle of something, trying to execute something, and I do a chmod 777 or chmod plus X or something, you're like, oh, like, yeah, I don't know what those numbers meant, but I know that he changed the permissions of that file, and now he can do something else with it. I understand that piece of it. So yeah, you don't need to necessarily know how to do it, but understanding that these things are available to you, and that it's something you can practice. You can learn these things for sure. Yeah. So next time we have package management. So we're gonna learn how to get stuff installed. We're gonna install some stuff from source. And actually this one should go a lot faster because we're gonna be talking about kind of how to manage the server. So we're going to be like the way you manage a server is you get information about it. You need to be able to log into a server and to get information about it. Things like its memory, its storage, you know, the CPU information, what's running on it at a certain given time, IO management, what's going in and out of the server, you know, the disks on there, need to know about the file system and networking and things like that. So that should actually be a lot faster because there's not like, it's going to be very quick to show you how to get those things. And then we'll expound further on like how to use them to solve problems. But yeah, it's a lot of just grabbing information next time as well. Cool. So it was a lot of Linux for one day. How do you guys feel about it? Definitely, I know it's a lot. But how do you feel about it? And are you guys confident that you could? Are you confident that given, not saying you had to install it, but are you confident that given a Linux environment that you could go in and like start running some of these commands? Again, you may not know what you're doing, but are you confident that you could go and start somewhere and say, all right, I don't really know anything we did tonight, but I do know how to see where I am. So I'm just gonna go ahead and type that in. And I may not know what that means, but it's a start. And now I can, you know, maybe connect the dots here. I see a slash here. I know he said something about paths here. So maybe I'll go to Google and I'll type in Linux paths. And ooh, I get this thing about paths, and maybe it's not what he was talking about because this is not what I was talking about, but it is, but not really. But understanding file paths and how to use them, the first option here, maybe reading up on that. But that's all I want from you. I want you to give you some direction with a little bit of context so that you can go off and get real good, real good. All right, how do I download thing within my virtual machine? Ooh, within the terminal. Great question. Let's do it real quick. I don't know. All right, three things, D-Flare. You have all the good questions. I like how you're messing around with it. You're already doing exactly what I want you to do. So first thing I'm going to answer is, when does our Golang knowledge interact with our Linux knowledge? It's gonna interact when we get to academy.mastermind.io. It's gonna interact when we get to next Sunday, which will be the lab, and it will only interact. We won't be writing Go, but it'll interact because Bash scripting has a lot of the same tools available to it. So things like loops, things like variables, Bash has the same stuff in it. So that coding knowledge will help. We probably won't do any more Go here, but what you can do is, in your Linux environment, you can go ahead and get Go installed in there, and you can use some kind of editor like Nano or Vim to create a Go file, maybe a hello world file or something else, and see if you can get that to run in your server, because that is exactly what you would do if you were a systems administrator. If you were, helping some Go developers, you were supporting some Go developers, you would need to be able to spin up a system, and you need to be able to get the things that they need installed on it. So getting Go properly set up and getting the code or the application onto the server that it needs to run on is kind of where you would start. So I would do those things. But again, that knowledge will interact once we get to the Bash scripting piece. Do I think someone could get a job where you work after this boot camp? That is a phenomenal question. If this is where you started, no. I'm 100% honest with you, no. Because this boot camp, especially if you're fresh to this stuff, this boot camp is going to give you, it's going to allow you to touch on all the concepts, but it's not going to put a ton of context around how they fit together. And a lot of the stuff that we need for DevOps engineers is kind of that in the trenches stuff. So like understanding, it's not important that you understand exactly how to use the technologies and things that we use, but you kind of have to have the you kind of have to have been in it and like learned how to troubleshoot various problems, because there's a lot of stuff, various problems and how to navigate all these different things. But what this will allow you to do is, one, if you're super fresh, it'll give you, if this is like the first time you're seeing this stuff, like this is the first time you're seeing this stuff, it'll give you insight into kind of everything that goes into the software development lifecycle. This is like everything. This is like start to finish, everything that goes into building software and getting it out to the world. So if you weren't sure if you liked coding, or you weren't sure if you wanted to be a systems administrator, you're not sure where you wanted to fit in the process, this will tell you that. Two, this will give you the opportunity to get into the industry at a bunch of different places. So you can get a job just from knowing Linux. You can get a systems administrator job. You can get a Linux administrator job just from knowing Linux. You can get a job just from knowing AWS. We're going to get to the cloud. You can get a job just for knowing that. Knowing both of those things is a super plus. And you can get a job, you can get a cloud administrator job from knowing the two of those things. You can get a job if you're just a Kubernetes administrator. Now, there's a bunch of levels on that, but there are release managers who just know CI/CD and Git. We learned a little bit about Git, who just know that stuff and kind of a little bit of system stuff. So I do not think you will be able to get a DevOps engineer job if this is your first time going through this stuff where I work currently. But I think there are places where you might be able to. But I think there are places that I do think there are places where you could get into the industry if you take the time to really learn these pieces. So like, yes, we went over a bunch of stuff tonight for Linux, but that doesn't make you a master at these things. Like, I do think that if you like really got good at navigating the command line and really understood users and groups and permissions and text manipulation, and you got through all this stuff, there are jobs for you. 1000% there are jobs for you. And I can help you find those if you need to find them. But I don't want you to think that you're going to go get a DevOps job just from doing this. Now, if you have a history of, if you're a developer and you never touched any of this stuff and you've got some years of experience in the industry and you're diving into this stuff, I do think you get a DevOps job after finishing this course. 100%. If you spend the time, if you spend those extra 5 hours a week diving into this stuff, absolutely. I think you'll be able to crush an interview. I think you'll have the context on what you need to be able to solve it. But I mean, to get in the door. But again, context is everything. And I can give you, like, throughout this, you'll get a lot of context about what each of these technologies solves kind of in their own bubbles, and you'll get it on a higher level. But until you get to be on that project, until you get to like be a part of that thing, it's really hard to make it work. Now, I'm looking for ways to solve that. I have some really interesting ideas on how to add that context, how to take basically people through first the information and then hands-on, full scope. Like, let's take a project zero to here. Let's take an old legacy project and let's modernize it and let's work through all this stuff. Let's containerize it and let's put in some automation and put in some workflows, build pipelines, get it out to get it to automatically deploy to cloud services, all that stuff. Working on that, really working on that. I'm hoping that it'll be a part of the next 12-week sessions, which start in like May. I'm hoping, but I can't make any promises because there's some other stuff that's coming with that. But yeah, I think that's where this stuff is super valuable. But as you can see here, it took us 3 hours tonight to just go over kind of a piece of Linux, and that's why it's kind of tough for you to kind of get this stuff in 12 weeks. Maybe if we were going every day, maybe you would be able to, but twice a week. If this is your first time seeing it, I don't think you'll be able to get a job doing DevOps. I don't even think you would want a job as a DevOps engineer if this is all you saw of it. But again, yes, maybe you can get a cloud administrator position, Linux administrator position. You can jump in somewhere to start learning this stuff to help you get more comfortable, where you can start putting this stuff to work. And there's a lot of overlap. Like, there's a ton of overlap in all these positions to what you will be able to do. So just keeping it honest. Let's see. When is next session? Next session for DevOps is Tuesday. Tomorrow is Python. There's a Python bootcamp going on right now as well. So if you're trying to learn how to code, it's only focused on Python. So that is on Mondays and Wednesdays. Is Golang good for networking? Yes. Golang is great for network programming. Really good for network programming. So that's something that interests you. Golang is amazing for that. Hey, Vespar Software. Thanks for the follow. Welcome to the channel. See Docker Kubernetes. Yes. So when we get to the Docker and Kubernetes piece, there's a few parts where I'm going to tell people to really pay attention. One's the cloud. I think Linux is important for anything you go into, or at least having some basic command line knowledge and understand what you're doing. The cloud is super important. I tell people to pay attention there because, again, I think that's the easiest place to hop in, where there are jobs for you right now, and that you could take. I really think you could take a month or two to really get up on the cloud, go get an AWS cert, and really genuinely find a job. And then containers and Kubernetes. Thanks everybody for the follow. I just saw a couple of follows in there. I know I missed some of you, but containers and Kubernetes is the new hotness right now. Now there's a few levels of like learning before you can truly understand containers and Kubernetes. But like, man, it's definitely a direction you should definitely send yourself in. If you can get yourself that certified Kubernetes administrator, the CKA, like somebody, like people want Kubernetes so bad right now that they'll hire you. They will hire you ASAP, for sure. But there's some levels to that. When we get there, we'll spend a lot of time on there. Let's see. Yes, Docker is Golang, but it's a general language that's good for most things. Yep. I need these jobs. Reach out. Like I said, Mastermind Academy is the teaching. But this year, starting this year, Mastermind is going to be bigger, and the goal is to be help. Like I'm trying to work some partnerships right now with some companies that would really like hungry engineers who are looking to learn. So working on it right now. And besides that, I'll just be working to connect people with just jobs that want them. Just kind of expanding the reach. I've actually already had a few companies reach out to me like, we see what you're doing. It seems like you have people who are hungry coming to you to learn. You mind passing them our way when we have some openings? I was like, absolutely. Like, I would love to. Like, that's the only goal of this, is to get people some opportunities to some sweet jobs. Expand your horizons, get you some opportunities. Because again, once you're in the industry, once you get your foot in the door, I'm telling you, once you get your foot in the door, if you stay hungry, you'll do whatever you want. Like the first one's the only one that matters. And after the first one, you can go do whatever you want. You can learn, use your resources, and like people just want to like know that you've worked somewhere. Helps a lot. So trying to figure that out. Would be interesting to take someone's project from the Python class and let's try to turn the programs to run on AWS virtual machine. Yes. So what I'm actually trying to do, I'll let you guys in on I have big dreams. I have big plans. I'm actually trying to take companies that have already transitioned legacy environments, so old stuff who've already transitioned it. I'm trying to let people give me access to legacy code bases, to let us see what we could do with it. I'm really looking for, I want to see. Yeah, I'm working with some people right now. I'm talking to a bunch of people, just trying to get someone to turn over some code. I really want someone to turn over some code for me, so we can figure out what to do there. But I would love to. We can take it under the stream in the description. Oh yeah, full schedule's up down there. Cool. Our poor cloud engineers using Terraform right now and trying to get our entire pipeline, which currently works via Argo workflows on GKE, to work on that. That sounds like a fun problem. I would love to, like, I don't know. Because I'm managing an application team right now. I would love to be working on all that Terraform stuff and trying to fill that, like, work out that pipeline. That sounds fun for me. Have you able to make it through all the initial emails? So really close. I'm on the last couple. I'm definitely on the last couple. Actually, I think I found yours. A bunch of people sent me some resumes. All the resumes coming through now. I'm gonna have responses for everyone who sent me a resume this week for sure. But I'm just about through all of the emails. Download something in the terminal. Sorry. Let's do that. Let's download something. So let's say there's a file. Random. No. Let's go with an ISO. So let's say Ubuntu download. The way that you download something via the terminal. So let's say you log into a server and you need to get something from the internet onto your server. Cancel. Let's see. You need to get the link. You need to get the link, the URL of the download. So right here, I right click and copied link address. But to download from the terminal, you can simply use a command called wget. Wget is a great command to be able to download something. And you do wget and you paste in the link that you want to paste in, and it will go ahead and it will download for you. So to download that zip file or download the ISO file, whatever you want, wget allows you to download it. You can also do it with a command called curl, but wget is an easy way to get something downloaded. Very simple, no extra flags. Simply just type in wget and the name of the file, and you go ahead and you download it. Calling the first download. Cool. I actually stopped this because I don't need this. Cancel. I don't need this, but wget is how you would do it. Are there security positions at your company? Thought about doing a picture position just to see. Not that I know of, but there's definitely some overlap in security and some of the infrastructure needs that we have and stuff. So again, the company that I work for, people don't know, I work for a software company in Baltimore called Fearless. We're a digital services company. We do digital transformations within the government, within the federal government. We do some stuff with state and local as well, but federal government is our main customer. But we do some agile transformations there. It's pretty interesting. We're very selective about the projects that we take. So we don't just do anything. And we only really work with organizations who are willing to commit to change and commit to doing things faster and better. And there are still hurdles in that as well. But security is probably a growing need. We do, like right now, I think we use like a part-time CISO for ISO for all of our stuff. Not for all of our stuff, for a couple of our projects have like part-time ISOs and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I can find out. I can see if there's anything. I haven't seen anything specifically about security, but yeah, if you're picking up this stuff, I would recommend applying for a DevOps role, to be honest with you. I think it could add some value. I have a QA team member that just moved out to Baltimore. Oh yes, we do have some openings right now for the gamut of Scrum team offerings. So we need a DevOps engineer. We need a few software engineers. We need a tester. So we need a QA or tester or test engineer. She should definitely apply. If you can give her my email, I can get her a resume in ASAP to get looked at. Abrooks at mastermind.io. I think we need like a Scrum Master as well. Yes, I think we need like a Scrum Master as well. But you can check out fearless.tech if you want to see it. I don't know what the tech stack is going to be for that team. I can try to find out and see if I can get some more of that information maybe tomorrow, or I can see if I can get some information for tomorrow, but I don't know what the tech stack is for that. All the tech stacks here are different. Like it's for whatever the project demands. We've got some Golang, we've got some Go projects, we've got some Java projects. Mine's Node React. We got some Rails projects. We have pretty much everything. But again, the stack, for everyone, actually, like the stack's not important. I think I just tweeted about this today, or I retweeted something about this today. The stack, yes, the stack's important because I think you should work on things that you want to work on, but the stack shouldn't be the thing that defines you. Like, you shouldn't be just a Python developer or Ruby developer, or even like for me, like AWS shouldn't be the only cloud that I'm interested in. Like, it's really like, no matter what it is, like you should really be an engineer that's solving problems using certain tools. So like at any given time, like I could go to one of our teams that's doing Ruby on Rails, and yes, I would not be the best Ruby on Rails developer on that team, but I would be able to help them solve problems using Ruby, because again, the goal is to know what the problem is, be able to isolate, be able to know how to solve it, know what steps need to be taken to solve it. Maybe I don't know the programming language, but knowing what needs to happen will allow me to find what I need to find in that programming language. So I don't think the stack is crazy important unless you like just never want to work in .NET, which is perfectly understandable. Same way, I don't want to say this right now, but I'm going to say it out loud anyway. Same way, I don't really want to work with Google Cloud. It's not because I think it's a bad product. I think it's just a trajectory of the industry. I think Google Cloud is it's gotten some big dings, especially recently. It was already far behind. But it's got some big dings recently. As somebody from a huge company like a healthcare company, just came out today and was like, "Yeah, like we can't, like, don't use this, like, don't use this thing." And I was like, "Dang, that's a hard hit." After it was already like kind of behind, but I don't know. I prefer not to use Google Cloud or like spend a lot of my time using Google Cloud unless this was like the longest term position ever. I don't know, but yeah, I'll find out about the stack for sure. And see if I can get you guys that information. wget the web address, and it simply links the website. Okay, gotcha. I now see what you're trying to do, and I now know what the problem is. You cannot download Hyper from the if your Linux does your Linux installation have a GUI or not? If it has a GUI. If it does not have a GUI, if you just install like the server and it's only the command line, then you can't get Hyper. But if it does, you have to download the Hyper package for whatever distro you install. So if you installed Ubuntu, let's see, Hyper .is. Go to other platforms, and you would right click like Debian. So if I wanted to get it for my machine, I'll right click Debian, and I would, with a copy link address, and I go in here and I go wget, and I paste in this, and it will download it, and it will give me this .deb package. So I don't know why I just called it a deb. That's very interesting, but I'll get this deb package, and then I would have to use whatever package manager is necessary. So this one, you need dpkg. So I would do sudo dpkg-i. This is just how you install deb packages. This is just something that you pick up over the years, something that you could Google, like how to install deb packages from the command line. But I actually don't know if this came through as a deb package. It actually won't even let me select it. But it's working. So it's installing, but I already have Hyper installed, so it probably won't do anything. But yes, if you do not have, everything I just did is exactly how you would do it if you are using Ubuntu that has a graphical user interface. So first thing is to wget, and the name of the wget plus the URL. And then whatever file it downloads, which is, I don't know why this is stupid. You need to do a sudo dpkg-i, and that's just the package manager that will install debs for you. Uno Plank, that's possible, but I've done projects in GCP, and like, I don't know, I'm spoiled by the amount of options that I have from AWS, and I mean even Azure. Like I'm spoiled, and yeah, I mean they're definitely getting there, but I don't know. They're still, for like the workflows and the things that I've tried to create with it, it works. It's great for Kubernetes. Like GKE is like the best Kubernetes implementation, managed Kubernetes implementation out there. But outside of that, it's okay. It's okay. It's not great yet. Maybe it'll get there. I got Pop OS. Can you show him the GUI package manager? Yes. Anyone who has Pop OS or Ubuntu, really. Pop OS has something called the Pop Shop. So if you go into all your applications, there's this Pop Shop thing here, and you can install stuff from here. I don't know what's in here. I think in Ubuntu, there's like an Ubuntu store or something, and you can just go in here and you can just like find the applications you want and click install. Everything's not going to be in here, but a lot of stuff is going to be in there. Plenty of bonuses from Google for using GCP. So also, if anyone wants to check out a Google Cloud Platform, they give the most money, at least for a developer environment. So if you like, I think you get like $300 if you just sign up to use it. You can like get $300 worth of credits to mess around. Certainly valuable. I would definitely go with that. Probably damning things about GCP. Epic is just scared. Yeah, I don't think so either, but I mean, I don't know, man. I do like Azure, but Amazon just they're not perfect. They are certainly not, like, I'm not someone who's like, yo, Amazon's amazing, not at all. But they basically give you so many options that even when you run into problems, like there's something else you can use to solve it. And it's I don't know, super crazy, super simple. Oh, cool. Hyper worked. Excellent. I'm glad that worked for you. Glacier's cheaper. Yeah, Glacier is super duper cheap. We're gonna learn all about Amazon Glacier. Cool. All right, that's a lot. That is almost 4 hours of streaming now. Thanks everyone for sticking around. We may need to. I may need to reframe. I think I put on the site that all the streams would be 2 hours. I'm just gonna put 2+ hours. Sorry it took so long, but hopefully you got something out of it. Next time on Tuesday, we'll be learning about more Linux stuff. We'll be learning more about the management of Linux and how to solve problems in Linux, to be honest, and to get information, how to gather information so that you can make decisions. But thanks everyone for coming through tonight. Who's on? I'm trying to see if there's anyone I know streaming so we can raid them, but I don't see anyone. So we'll raid a random person because that's always fun. But thank you guys. Thank you all for showing up. I will see you all on Tuesday or tomorrow if you're joining the Python. I think tomorrow in Python we're learning data structures. We moved on from data types and we're just getting to data structures. So this is like in Go when we were learning about our arrays and stuff like that and slices. We're going to be learning about data structures in Go, lists and dictionaries, ways to just structure our data, easy ways to manage our data. So cool. Everyone have a good night. Oh, also, if you're behind, I just rendered out all of the videos from the last 2 weeks, and I will upload them. I had to wait till the end of the stream because they just finished rendering. I will upload them, so you should be able to see all of those things in YouTube. If you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, if you want to catch up tomorrow, sometime tomorrow, maybe in the afternoon. I'm gonna try to upload them now before I leave, but I need to put in all the information, so I'm not sure they're gonna get into the right what are those things called? The right playlist, etc. But everyone, have a good night. Thanks for coming through. I'll see you later.